copy of this. Welcome all of you all to United Black Community's April Forum for 2022. And United Black Community is a coalition of individuals from our community, from various organizations, who come together forums and programs that are not necessarily seen everywhere in our community, but are necessary. They are significant to our broader struggle. And today is no different. We are known by many for the work we do during Kwanzaa, which is very significant. But outside of Kwanzaa, throughout the year, we have these workshops, and they start from February and go all the way until September. Usually we kick off with a workshop on science and technology and how it's impacting our community, the broader African community. And we generally end in September with a Coltrane tribute and various programs in between, including the next program, which we're going to have next month, which is our traditional annual tribute conference in honor of our brother Omowale Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, which is Kuzaliwa. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, we're gonna open up, as we always should, in recognition of the fact that we are a united Black community of not just those in the physical realm, but our ancestors. We are our ancestors, and our ancestors are always with us. So when we get together, we like to acknowledge them, not just acknowledge them, but invite them. The ones who want to be part of what we're doing, we want to invite them to be part of what we're doing, actually formally doing so. That's what libation is. It's an invitation for the ancestors to join us. It's also asking permission from the ancestors to move forward. So it's very critical that we do so whenever we start our programs. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce one of the founding members of United Black Community, Brother Rasafiq Rosi. He will lead us in libation.
Hey, you muted, Bob.
You're muted, Bob. Got to unmute.
Can't hear you.
Okay.
Got you now.
Now can I be heard?
Yes, it's Bob.
Sate Sana Baba. Madasi Duau. Greetings, everyone. So wonderful to have all of us here on this beautiful Friday evening as we look at issues and various things that are going on in our community. So I'm here to do the libation. Divine spiritual blessings, peace, love, power, joy, happiness, optimal health, and cosmic African vibrations in the spirit of healing and loving and embracing our African community, families, neighborhoods, loved ones, and ourselves. As we look at some of the issues that we're faced with today, tonight specifically, the epidemic of violence and unrest and unhealthy kinds of things that are occurring to our people. And we want to take a look at that, analyze that, and understand why it's happening, and talk about prevention and symptoms and things that can be done to ameliorate some of these things. So we call upon God, the Creator, our ancestors, the deities, to embrace us and to give us direction, purpose, and focus as we address these issues, and to give us strength and vitality and upliftment, to give us the power, actually, to change things. We have to very definitely address these things in whatever way we can. All of us have to come together in unity and do practice the principles of Kwanzaa, as Baba Kalechi said. Unity and Kuji Chakalia, collective work and responsibility, all the way to creativity and imani, faith. Faith in the fact that we can do this ourselves. And we all have to come together to make it happen. So I behoove all of us to take part in this and wholeheartedly contribute to this discussion. We ask this in the name of all our ancestors, the Creator, and the deities. All praises are due. Asante Sana.
Ebo, Bob.
Asante Sana, Baba. Asante Sana.
They do.
So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our moderator for the evening, Bobby Imam Mukumba. He's known to many of us. He's another founding member of United Black Community. He's also the treasurer of many, many groups, including the African Freedom Fund, and a key member of UNIA, Appeal Incorporated, Council of Elders, and many, many organizations in our community. He's a critical brother to what we do. So without further ado, Baba Imam Mukumba.
Hey, Asante Sana, Baba, for that introduction. And welcome everyone with us tonight. As Baba Rasfik said, we're going to discuss a very, very important topic tonight, addressing the epidemic of violence in our community among our people. The purpose of this forum is to collectively share information, wisdom, and understanding about the root causes of the epidemic of violence plaguing our community, and developing ways and means of reducing that level of violence so we as a people can really grow and develop. This forum will be done in two parts. The first segment, we'll have our brother Cam Howard, who will address the root causes of violence. And the second presenter will be Brother Jeff MENZIE, who will be discussing the symptoms and the warning signs of violence. I don't see Jeff on the line, but I'm hoping will be here with us at about 7:40, I think, this time when he come on. But anyway, without any further ado, we will begin the program with Baba Cam Howard. And I know he's a member of the COBRA organization. And I also found out that he's a member of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League in Chicago. So Brother Cam, without any further ado, let's hear you as you tell us some of the root causes of violence that's plaguing our community. Brother Cam.
Thank you, Brother Imamu, and thank the United Black Community for giving me this opportunity to share tonight. Can I share my screen? Is that possible?
Sure.
All right, because I put together just like a little quick PowerPoint.
Okay.
And, we're talking about the root causes of violence. Dr. Amos Wilson says that America is a crimogenic society. So America gives birth to crime. So that is a root cause of violence in our community, is that we live in a violent society, violent nation, white supremacy, which gives birth to all forms of violence that has been targeted toward us. But also, as Dr. Wilson says, in Black on Black violence, the psychodynamics of self-annihilation in the service of white domination, is that we tend to emulate our pathological, sociological fathers. Violence, the same violence that they commit, we commit against each other. So just want to start off by saying that's really the root cause of violence. But in this presentation, it's one that I wrote a op-ed in Train Chicago Business, which is the leading business magazine in Chicago. They asked me to do an op-ed on reparations, and I felt that the violence we're experiencing is one of the areas that we must target resources to on the local levels if we're talking about reparations, especially, while we see this record uptick in violence across the country. So I entitled that op-ed, Bringing Reparations and Public Safety Together, and I'll just share from that perspective. see if I can start. So I'll talk about a little bit, touch on the record violence that we're experiencing. I'll talk about the two correlates that I think are driving the violence, fatherlessness and unemployment. And I'll talk about how do we repair our communities and why this is a reparations or reparative justice issue. The record violence we're seeing in our community is happening all across America. Chicago, there were 800 murders last year, 4,500 shootings, and 12-year-old carjackers. So we see, an extreme form of violence happening at this time in our community. I was in New Orleans a couple of weeks ago. They also have record levels of violence in New Orleans, over 200 murders in New Orleans. St. Louis is the most dangerous city per capita in America. It's number 13 in the world at 66 murders per 100,000 people. And we reached out to organizations and cities with the largest populations, and we're all dealing with the same thing, whether it's New York, Milwaukee, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Detroit, DC. I mean, all these cities, we're experiencing the exact same record level of violence. In a recent visit to Chicago, we have a group of Columbia University students who are doing a paper or some research in two communities in Chicago. East Garfield Park is on the west side and Inglewood on the south side. I grew up in Inglewood district, Inglewood area back in the 1960s and 70s, when it was a strong working class family. There was factories and 70% of the communities were two-parent families, 70% of the families were two-parent families. And now it's one of the 2, 3, or 4 most dangerous communities in the city of Chicago. But we had a group of Columbia University students come to tour two neighborhoods as they prepared to do a paper on violence in our community. And they were interacting with a young brother who engaged in some mediation type of actions with rival groups, rival cliques that are warring against each other in the Inglewood community. He's usually the first one on the scene to try to mediate and work things out. And I asked him as we were leaving, I said, how many of these young brothers that you're working with have fathers? And he said, none have fathers. So that's one of the a top characteristic of the violent perpetrators in cities across America is that they are 2 to 4 generations fatherless. And thousands of studies have shown a correlation of fatherlessness with violence, also fatherlessness with truancy, dropout, promiscuity, as well as teen pregnancy. But certainly we know that fatherlessness and violence have a direct correlation. In Inglewood, 87% of the families are single parent, meaning only 13% of the families, a little over 1 out of 10 are two-parent traditional families. In West Garfield, it's about 1.5, 1.5 families out of 10 are traditional two-parent families. Why is this the case? Family composition and employment has been linked historically. Professor Linwood Tauheed is an economist, brother at St. Louis University. He was tagged to do a report in the Illinois Transatlantic Slave Trade Commission report in 2014. And he looked at labor force participation and two-parent families from 1865 to 2000. It was the time that he concluded the data that he used. For 135 years, he found that marriage for men, Black and white, lagged 8 to 15% points behind their labor force participation. So when labor force participation moved up, two-parent families moved up, Black and white. When labor force participation moved down, two-parent families between in Black and white households moved down. And this movement was always in the range of 8 to 15 points. So therefore, if the labor force participation in the Black or white family was 90%, then you would expect to find 75 to 82% two-parent families. And that's exactly what he found. If labor force participation was 50%, as it is now in our community, you would expect to find marriage rates at 35 to 42%. And that's exactly what you have now. So when we talk about labor force participation, we're talking about the formal economy, one that's regulated by society. In the largest cities, there was a report in 2016 that the largest cities in America where Black people live, we are only 47 to 51% in the labor force, ages 16 to 60. 47 to 51% in the formal economy. We're not talking about unemployment stats, people looking for jobs. We're talking about people who have been historically locked out of the labor force and not even looking for a job or trying to even engage in that formal economy for several reasons. But we find that they're 50%. And when you reduce that from ages 16 to 24, only 3 out of 10, I think it's 27%, less than 30%, are in the formal economy. And when you reduce that to ages 16 to 20, only 12%, or 1 out of 10, are in the traditional formal economy. So what are the other 9 out of 10, these ages 16 to 20, or the 7 out of 10, ages 16 to 24? What are they doing to survive if they cannot exist, or if they're not in the formal economy? How do they survive? Well, they survive in the informal economy. And the informal economy in America is overwhelmingly illegal. When you go to countries like many countries in Africa, many countries in Asia, their informal economy is anywhere from 50 to 75% of their economy. In America, the informal economy is only 15%, and it's predominantly illegal. But this is where these young men, these young people have been forced to survive. You have to survive. You have to provide food for yourself. You have to provide shelter and clothing for yourself. And the only way these young men can do that in this economy is through the informal economy, again, which is often illegal, and it's often one that you have to protect your share of that economy through violent means. And many of these young people have been targeted for criminalization at an early age. They were over-disciplined in schools. They were non-educated or miseducated. They were misunderstood and devalued by society, and even Blacks in their own community. There was a study by Professor, I can't remember his name, but he was a brother who was tagged to head Obama's Black Men Project, My Brother's Keeper Project. He did a study around Black male educational achievement in 2000, probably 10 or 11, and he found that in communities, Black communities, whether young brothers were high performing in school or low performing in school, there were 2 things that they shared. No matter what level of educational output they were engaged in, either they were high performing or low performing, one was that they were afraid when they walked out the house. And the second was they didn't think the adults in their community liked them. So we've been devaluing our children, and that also pushes them out into the informal economy, or pushes them away from some of the traditional ways in which they should matriculate through life as children, especially young Black men. We label them criminal. We walk down the street and because they're in a certain age, we also have a devalued status that we place upon them. So this is what they experience. And many of them, we know they drop out mentally in school at the 3rd grade, meaning they just cut off of learning. And by the time they get to the 7th and 11th grades, they actually physically drop out. Furthermore, they are locked out of the informal economy because they don't have the skills to participate in the formal economy. Even at a time now where there are many job vacancies in America, we know that the infrastructure bill is going to produce millions of jobs. These young people are not going to be able to take advantage of these jobs because they don't have the skills to take advantage of these jobs. So even in a time of plenty, we'll see this violence still going on and probably increasing if there's no attempt by our community to engage in reparative mechanisms and systems to ensure that our children can get into the formal economy. In order for these men to enter the labor market, they must undergo an intentional process of employability. This is what we must do. They must develop life skills. They must engage in trauma counseling, anger management, cultural knowledge, which is the key. We know that, there's been many studies that show that Black people who have a higher knowledge of their history and culture do well in life, do better in school, do better with jobs, et cetera. Job skills, parenting skills, GED and vocational education. All of this is necessary if we're going to talk about ending violence and moving these brothers and young sisters into the formal economy. Many of those services that I stated already exist. Those job training, workforce development, and all these type of services already exist. However, there's no incentive for these young people to take advantage of these services that already exist. To walk in the street, off the street and say, I need to go into trauma counseling, or I need to get an anger management class, or I need some life skills. No, they have to, expose themselves to being, less than, to being in need, to be damaged, to be dumb, or be dangerous. And so none of them, just readily walk off the street into these particular programs. They must be incentivized because, again, they're spending their time engaged in survival. What can I do to survive? And so to incentivize them to take advantage of these services, we think that a guaranteed basic income is necessary. And they would receive this basic income for 2 years, as long as they are engaged in one of the remedial services that I talked about. They can go from one, then to the next, then to the next, with the purpose being to get them into the legal economy and reduce their dependence on the illegal economy. What we know is that the average income of these men in the drug economy is around $900 a month. Most people think they're making, everybody's making thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, balling, rolling, high rollers and all that. But that's not the case. There's, that's an upper level, those are upper level drug dealers, but the average drug dealer, the average young brother in the informal economy or sister is making around $900. And it's lower if you remove the top 20% of earners in this trade. It is lower than $900. So a basic income of $680, $800 will replace 70 to 90% of the survival income that they're getting from the informal, illegal economy. So why is this a reparations issue? And it's clear for those of us who, are in the Black liberation movement or, have, been part of the Black movement for a long time. It's clear to us that wars have been waged against our community. And when you wage this by the federal government, and when you wage a war against our community, ultimately what you're doing is you're waging a war against the Black family. Because the family unit, traditional two-parent family unit composes of both male and female. And if you engage a war on the community, you are engaging a war on one of those adults and even on the children. And so when these federal policies were put in place, Lyndon Johnson's War on Crime Law Enforcement Assistance Act empowered the government to militarize local police, which we saw, heavily exposed during the Ferguson uprising. By the 1970s, President Nixon established his war on drugs, which was the Black Power movement. Heroin was dumped in our communities. There was a quote by Ehrlichman that said, one of Nixon's top aides, who said, we knew that the Blacks weren't engaged in heroin. We used that as a way to go into their communities and disrupt their leaders by saying we were waging a war on heroin. Well, they were really waging a war on the Black Power movement. And we have that quote, and I misquoted him, but it is something to that effect. I can provide that quote later. We know Hoover's COINTELPRO was a war against Black nationalism, and he particularly talked about the Black Panther movement, but in his COINTELPRO memo, he talked about a war on Black nationalism, Black nationalist organizations, and then he named the Black Panther Party as one, but it was certainly a war against Black nationalism. The President Ronald Reagan's Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which engaged mandatory minimum sentences, which he used crack cocaine dollars to fund a legal war in Nicaragua, and that cocaine was dumped in our communities in the form of crack. It ultimately became a war against Black children, Black mothers, Black babies, because we know a lot of so-called quote unquote crack babies were born as a result of that war effort in Nicaragua that affected our communities. President Bill Clinton's Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, that was a street strikes law. All of this has accumulated into what we call mass incarceration. And all these federal legislative acts, programs, and policies accumulate into what we refer to as mass incarceration. Mass incarceration, we have to look at that as meaning mass fatherlessness in our homes, mass attack on our families, mass attack on our children as a result of destroying a key element in the family. And so mass fatherlessness means massive violence and crime within our communities. Thus, we demand reparations for public safety. And I'm just going to finish with that. We feel this is a Reparations Act. We can chart the crimes that this federal government has committed against us from the executive level of government. And because crimes were committed against us, these injuries result in the massive violence that we experience in our community, and thus reparations are due. Thank you. Ivy Toaston, so, yeah, thanks, Nkechi. That was Dr. Toaston who wrote that report that identified the fear amongst our children as they walk out the house, as well as their not believing that the adults care for them in their communities.
Okay, Brother Cam, we appreciate you, brother, for that presentation. And I forgot to mention to everyone before, when you come on, you got to have paper and pencil ready, because there's a lot of pertinent information that will help give us that understanding of what is really going on out here as we study the level of violence in our communities. Very good. And is there any way we could get a copy of that report?
Sure, I'll send it to you and you can send it out, brother.
Man, we really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Yeah. And there was another report before we go to the next guest that we've been studying called the Gun Violence Problem Analysis Summary Report by the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform. And they gave out some startling information as well about the some of the causes of that violence and the ages of these young people who are victims as well as perpetrators of the violence in our community. I think the ages were about 18 to 34 years old, young men. So that's very important. And we're going to get question and answers and open a discussion to the community after the last presenter. So please, everybody, hold on, because we're going to get to you. Okay, the next presenter will be our brother who's always been with us. When we call on him, he's always there. And we can't thank Brother Jeff MENZIE, Dr. Jeff MENZIE, enough. So he's going to help us with the discussion on symptoms and some of the warning signs of violence. So if you know someone in your family or community who is suffering or have any of these warning signs, I think it's time to see if we can give that person some help. So let Brother Jeff MENZIE talk about that. Brother Jeff, greetings.
Hey, peace, Baba. How you been, man?
Oh man, moving forward, brother. Glad you could come and share with us this evening.
Yeah, I really appreciate the invitation as always, fam.
Yes, yes.
Peace to everybody else. I'm seeing a lot of familiar name and a few familiar faces out there. It's always good to see the family.
Right.
You know, never really getting used to this two-dimensional approach, on these flat screens. So hopefully we'll be back together in person sooner or later. Heck, this is, being forced into this type of interaction is also an act of violence.
Oh man, wow.
And I say it with some levity, but really though, because so much about our people is the interpersonal interactions and communications, being able to, be in each other's presence, being able to engage each other, being able to, literally vibe with each other. And we've been forced into this technology mediated exchange,
Yes.
and, violence is a very, very disruptive phenomenon. Violence is something that's designed to impact on multiple levels the way that a person survives. It's designed to change up and turn our day-to-day lives into something that's uncertain, into something that is dangerous. It's like creating an innately dangerous situation for us. And I think that this can literally be qualified as such. But again, I want to thank you all for the invitation to come and make this brief presentation this afternoon. What I want to do, and it was really difficult for me to kind of narrow down and not talk about, the philosophy of violence and where it comes from, talking from, I'm sitting up here with stacks, like, of course, I've got all the Amos Wilson books, every one of his books. I had to try really hard to just not break down.
Whoa,
I told myself I'm gonna do good today.
Man.
And I said, I'm gonna pull back, and I'm not gonna give a dissertation on Amos Wilson's perspective on violence and how, any type of violence that we observe within the Black community, within Black individuals, is a direct reflection of the violence that we receive at the hands of white supremacy, right? So that I figure, that's going to be covered. And if it hasn't been covered by the other presenters, then we'll deal with it in the Q&A section. What I did decide to do was to take the more technical and psychological approach. My background being in clinical psychology is where my training is, and where a lot of my practice is. And so speaking about it from the list of violent symptoms from the American Psychological Association itself. But I do want to frame that within the context of Dr. Akbar's book, the Akbar Papers. And in this book, beginning on page 160, I believe, or page 160, he talks about the pathologies, culturally relevant pathologies that we find within Black people. And, there are three that I'll discuss briefly, but it's two out of those three that are directly related to violence, right? The first one is the alien self disorder, right? And then the second one is going to be the anti-self disorder. And then the third one is going to be self-destructive disorders. And what you're going to find is that in his first disorder, the anti-self disorder, the alien self disorder, it's when a person can be made to want to distance themselves from themselves. And in the context of what Dr. Akbar is talking about, is the separation us from our African selves. And that's one of the first things that's necessary for you to convert an otherwise healthy individual into a person that is actually anti-self, which is the next stage. So you first must alienate themselves from themselves. And so that's where you see a lot of this propaganda being spread about, propaganda and stereotypes being spread about who we are as African people, who we are as descendants of Africans, and who our ancestors are, and who they were when they were in the flesh. And so part of this alienation process, and if you remember, Dr. Welson has, I think it's actually the second chapter in the ISIS papers about alienation and anxiety. And she speaks about how that impacts white people and creates white supremacy. But when you look at the whole process of alienation, it's a separation of a person from themselves. And that's the first blow required to render us susceptible to make us actually ultimately self-destructive individuals. And so that alienation process comes by coloring our perspective of who we are, what we are, how we are, when we are, and where we are. It totally disorients us about the reality of our situation. And our situation from the African worldview is not just present state situation, but it's situation that spans as far back into the past as we possibly can go, which is infinite, and then as far into the future as we could possibly go. So it covers all aspects of time simultaneously. And so what they do is they disrupt the historical aspect of our orientation with time. And if you think about what Amos Wilson said in The Falsification of African Consciousness, he cited an article in Omni magazine where it talks about the ability to hypnotize somebody and then give them a post-hypnotic suggestion that impacts their understanding of their time frame or their timeline. So if you hypnotize somebody and tell them that their past is non-existent, then they'll wake up with a certain psychological disposition. If you tell them that their present state is doomed, then they wake up with a different type of psychological disposition. And if you confuse them about their future, make them think that they don't have a future, then they wake up with a whole different psychological disposition, right? And so by impacting our understanding of our past by simple tasks like starting history, when African people show up in history, it's always in response to white people's presence, right? Whether you're talking about enslavement, colonialism, the Middle Passage, whatever the case may be, we rarely in this regular school system get an understanding of the African presence, absence of European presence. And not only absence of European presence, but absence of European domination. And so almost every action that you see from African peoples in the standard history course is somehow or another fighting the superior white presence, or acquiescing to it, or welcoming it, or celebrating it. All of that is violence. Every bit of that is violence. And that's the violence that Amos Wilson talked about we are responding to. Because even though they try to whitewash and sanitize the details of their violence, then they throw us these curveballs by having certain of our institutions and certain of our scholars setting up memorials of these acts of violence. And they do it under the guise as if they're celebrating us and helping us to celebrate our heritage. So that you get those lynching memorials. Then you get an entire floor of the Smithsonian Museum dedicated to your enslavement. You know, and they put that down in the basement and they encourage you to start there, right? And so all of these things are celebrating the violence that has been visited upon us as the victims of that violence, while simultaneously celebrating the perpetuators of the violence in their successful imposing of violent states upon us. Rarely do we talk about it in that way, but you know, every time I see one of those memorials being erected or being celebrated or being announced, being well funded, you know, these research endowments and research fellowships and things being dedicated to the unearthing of this wicked history, I always cringe, because I know that while it's for us to honor our ancestors and celebrate our ancestors' perseverance to get through that and survive so that we may be here today, it's also a celebration to those who were the actors and perpetuators of that violence. And a lot of times they'll stand around those memorials either up close and personal or at a distance, and they pop in their collars, celebrating how successfully their ancestors was able to exact violence on an entire population of people. So I always cringe about that stuff. So anyway, I said I wasn't gonna go all the way into that stuff, but it's kind of hard to talk about, you know, this violence without that level of understanding. So anyway, we rarely see ourselves showing up in history without that, right? And so that's a part of the alienation process. All of that helps to alienate us. And one of the number one things you can do to alienate a person from whatever it is you're trying to separate them from is to inject deep feelings of shame around what you want to separate them from, right? And so if I need for African descendants to deny their African descendancy, then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run a bunch of commercials on TV with starving African children with descended bellies who are so weak that they can't even get a fly off of their eyeball.
Right.
Think about those images from the 80s, y'all. What they were
They're still
flooding
out
us
there.
with, and, no doubt. And you would see like, who was it, like Sally Struthers and people like that. It'd be the sad music. And for 90 cents a day, you can help these poor African people who don't have 90 cents a day and enough strength to take a fly off of their eyeball. Think about that. It's a very, very deep image, because we had real world experiences where a fly would fly past your face and you would damn near knock yourself out trying to swat it. Imagine one on your eye and you can't get it off. Not because you're tied up, but because you can't get it off. And so to me, that's another form of violence, right? To even show, first to create that condition, in order to film that condition, in order to broadcast that condition to the people who are descendants of those that are in that condition, to make those people want to separate from their people who are in that condition.
And the missionaries do it every day and every week.
That's what one of the first things the missionaries did was study our ways and see what strengthened us, and then also identify what weakens us. So then when the soldiers went in there, they had a game plan. There's a book. Let me see if I can grab it real quick. Yep, boom. A book. Ron, there for our men, told me to read this book. It's called Bantu Philosophy by a dude named Placid Temples. And what it does is it talks about how the missionaries, he's part of a missionary movement, how they went into, Central and Southern Africa to study the people, and in order to set up systems of violence against the people so they can more easily and readily conquer them. They talk about it within the context of religion, but I understand it in the form of spiritual science, right? So they will, again, alienate you from what makes you strong in order that you're more susceptible and in a weakened state for when they come in with what makes them strong and take you over. These are all acts of violence. So alienation is that first piece, right? Dr. Akbar talks about separating you from that which is you, right? And then once you get separated from that which is you, then it's what I call the psychological autoimmune disease, where now you don't recognize yourself because you've been alienated from yourself. And so now you attack yourself. Similar to how your immune system in an autoimmune disease attacks your own body. For some reason, it doesn't recognize the healthy cells. It doesn't recognize your healthy self, and therefore it attacks yourself. And so it's like a psychological autoimmune disease. He calls it an anti-self disorder. So you go from being alienated to actually being against yourself. You've alienated, you're showing yourself, you don't like yourself because you've been taught that everything about yourself is actually a negative. And so now you go about attacking yourself. You're anti-self, you set up barriers. You prevent things from coming in that will help to strengthen yourself because you ain't about yourself no more. And so that's where you got all these things going on right now to where, we take on features of other people and we proudly do it. I saw a sister today, long curly blonde wig, ball cap on, in the middle of the hood, any way that we could possibly emulate them, because once we were alienated from ourselves, we were taught to gravitate towards them, right? And then when you gravitate towards them, then you begin to imitate them in the anti-process, right? And so now it's an anti as in, I'm gonna imitate them and I'm going to downgrade and degrade me without knowing that it's me. And so, so it's anti-self. So I'm gonna fast forward through that and talk about what Akbar called the self-destructive disorders, which is the not logical next step in its continuum of violence. It starts off very subtly, right? It starts off in such a way that you don't even know you're experiencing violence when they're alienating you. And when you're in the anti-process, you still don't understand that this is violence. And then the self-destructive comes in. And so now that you've been weakened and alienated yourself, and now that you're against yourself, it's easy for you now to be destructive towards yourself. And so that's when we're talking about the ingestion of drugs, right? And the only way and I heard the brother before me, Brother Howard, speaking about, the war on drugs. And there's a wonderful TV series called Snowfall that emulates that whole process to where the main character, Saint, I'm blocking his first name, forgive me for that, but his last name is Saint. He's supposed to be like Rick Ross' character, who was the mule that was tapped to help to bring in the drugs into the inner city and then send them across the nation, right? And so and he's dealing with the CIA and everything in this series. But that's a part of the self-destructive part. They give you the tools, they give you the weaponry, and they give you the marching orders to how to go about destroying yourself. And because our definition of self is not this individual sitting here, but the collective of all of us, then we go after the collective. Not only do they give us the weaponry, but they also give us the imagery, the personalities, the psychological disposition that now allows you to more readily engage in these behaviors. So they show you people like Superfly. They started a long time ago. They ain't even really a long time ago, but they show you like, the pimps and like Superfly. And not only was Superfly womanizing, and degrading women, putting them on the stroll, but at the same time, he was snorting a lot of cocaine at the same time, right? And so it was this whole meshing up of exploitive sexual behaviors, as well as the infusion of the drug culture at the same time. You go from there, then you turn into gangster rap. And I'm not a direct, but the next major thing coming up is some gangster rap, where they give you more personas, more violent personality, more violent imagery, more violent characters for the young ones to imitate and emulate so that they would know exactly what to do to be self-destructive. All of this is violence on a psychological level as well as on the physical level. And I'm gonna get into the real, the bullet. I got, like I said, I got the bullets that's gonna talk about how do you identify symptoms of violence before they, bubble to the surface. But again, this is context. And so, from the gangster rap piece, so that kind of became institutionalized to the point to where it becomes a part of the mainstream culture, the popular culture. We got even labels with their own associated personality types. And forgive my English if anybody's offended by it, but they a nigga is a real personality type. You know, and I'm speaking from a psychological perspective, to where it has very real characteristics and traits. A personality is a relatively set characteristics and traits displayed by a human being, right? And it comes with a particular look, a particular type of way of movement, particular lexicon or language that's utilized, particular attitudes and ideologies. A nigga is a real personality at this point, and it's being wholesale to us, to where our children are. I used to think I was a nigga. Like, real talk, when I was coming up in high school, I dressed like I was told to dress as a nigga. I walked as I was told to walk as like a nigga. I had my pants sagging. I carried certain weaponry that I was told that niggas was supposed to carry, and I engaged in other activities. And it wasn't until I got to Nashville and I was exposed, you know, to some of our scholars and some of our elders, you know, and some of our ancestors returned that was here on a righteous mission, that I realized that that ain't me, and I was able to refine myself. But when I was in that state of mind, I was prone to violence as well, because violence is one of the characteristic traits of niggas. It's very real. Mr. Fuller once told me, he said, Jeff, watch a hip hop video with the sound off. And he said, watch the movements. He said, watch the movement, watch the facial expression. He said, and that's talking to your, he kind of alluded to this next part about it being the body language of violence that's being transferred to you, because, you know, with your reptilian brain, it's like when you got like a snake, you know, you could charm a snake with your hand or with your head movement. That's the same way that we're able to be hypnotized and charmed. You know, it's through body language and body movements, right? Facial expressions. It's a deeper part of our consciousness that receives that type of communication. And it's oftentimes not as filtered as the higher levels of consciousness would be. And so we're more susceptible to be influenced by those types of communications. And so when you're seeing these fight videos, when you're seeing the rap music videos where the people are being violent, violent gestures, violent facial expressions, along with the actual verbiage of violence, then what you have is like a 1-2 punch that's infusing violence within your being, making you more susceptible and more likely to engage in violent acts and violent behaviors, both those against your individual self, as well as those against your collective extended self, your community, your neighbor, your family, your spouse, your mate, your children, right? And so you become violently dispositioned to where your default is more close to being violent than not. And remember, this is in a self-destructive state, which Dr. Akbar again calls a psychopathological state, right? These are pathologies. And because you're pathologically self-destructive, that means that you are going to perpetually do things to either hinder your success subtly or overtly hinder your success, which is literally committing a crime and becoming incarcerated and or annihilated, right? And so many levels of violence. You got the physical violence, you got emotional violence. The ingestion of drugs is violence. You know, so people that are hooked on heroin, crack, cocaine, weed, tobacco, alcohol, anything like that can be considered an act of self-destructive violence, right? We look at some disorders like intermittent explosive disorder. You've got I'm blocking. So you got the oppositional defiant disorder. These are some of the psychological categories that are identifying violent or aggressive behaviors in young people. You're particularly young people, and you age and you grow older, you maintain those characteristics. Antisocial personality disorder is another one. It's one of the sociopathic or either psychopathic disorders. Sociopathic disorders is when people don't have any empathy for other people. And so because we are a deeply connected people, part of the alienation process cuts off that empathy or that sense of connectiveness, and it begins to generate and create populations of sociopaths. And Dr. Wilson, in his book, it's in the Understanding Black Adolescent Male Violence, he talks about the sociopathic disposition. And he makes sure that he says that I'm not saying that African-American or black children are sociopaths, but they do display certain characteristic traits that are consistent with the sociopaths that are socializing us in a broader society, AKA white supremacists, right? So he does talk about violence being a form or a symptom or a characteristic trait of sociopaths. And we are very violent right now. We are very, very violent people towards ourselves right now. Nobody here needs convincing of that. We all know it. One thing that I will say, and then I'm gonna open up the and go through the bullet points so we can talk about it more specifically. Bobby Mama, what I'm looking like on time?
You must be good. He ain't said nothing.
Now he on mute. We just couldn't hear what he did say.
You good, Baba? You good?
Okay. Hey, peace, Baba.
No problem.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
all right,
Dr. Jeff, I'm on mute, but yeah, go ahead and get and you man, you're doing well, brother.
all right. Okay. Let me jump into the PowerPoint then. Let me open that up. I do have share screen capability on this side.
Yeah, bro.
Okay. Thanks, Baba. So that sociopathic piece is really, really important when we talk about understanding violence and the symptomology. It's very, very slick and it can be very, very subtle. But when we look at it, when you're looking at our children, let's start there. When you start to notice that there's like an increase in their loss of temper, most of our time, our teenagers are on edge. They could be moody, they could be, short fused, especially nowadays because so many of them got these little earphones in their ears 24/7 now. These earbuds is totally isolating them from their connectivity with everybody in their environment. And most of the time, I would dare say most of the time, they are pumping in music that is portraying violence as well. And the thing about violence in the brain is that the brain does not necessarily distinguish between real life violence and fantasy violence. And so hearing gunshots in a song is just as real as hearing gunshots outside, right, to the brain. And so when you look at the latest edition of the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, one of the things that they did was, this is what they call the psychologist or psychiatrist Bible. It's got all of the mental disorders and the criteria for diagnosing them. One of the things that they did, and I think it was really, really slick that they did this, but from the previous edition to the current edition, they actually changed the diagnostic criteria by which you diagnose PTSD, right? And so they changed how a person is now traumatized. Well, let me say this, they changed the way by which you would diagnose a traumatized person, but the way that people are traumatized doesn't change, even if they change how you diagnose it. Y'all follow what I'm saying? And so what they did is they changed the diagnostic criteria to whereas in the fourth edition, in the fourth TR edition, you can become traumatized by witnessing trauma on TV. So if you watch the news and the news is talking about somebody getting shot and they show like the police, they show like the sheet over a body in the middle of the street, they show like the little markers for all the shit where the casings, the bullet casings are laying on the ground and stuff. That at one point in time was acknowledged as being traumatic. Vicarious experience of trauma is how it was worded. Now in the new edition, the only way that you are traumatized by that same experience now is if it's related to you, if it's somewhere where you work, if it's somewhere that somebody in your family work, you have to have some type of relationship to that place, or it has to be a part of your job. And so what they did is they effectively took out that known traumatizing situation, which is the indirect or vicarious experience in the trauma. They lessened that as far as the diagnosing of it is concerned, but nothing has changed as far as the human mind and the human body is concerned when it comes to experiencing those things. Y'all follow what I'm saying? So in other words, they have taken away the ability to diagnose or recognize the traumatic impact of those vicarious experiences of violence and trauma, which then makes it so now you no longer have that as a reasoning for why a little boy in school might be acting out tomorrow when there was gunshots that occurred in the neighborhood that maybe that was across town somewhere, but he heard the shots, or that he saw it on the news, that he saw that Trayvon Martin was shot, or was killed, or that he saw that Tamir Rice was shot up in Cleveland, or Sandra Bland killed in jail mysteriously. Those things are no longer traumatizing according to the APA Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. And so they remove something that we are being inundated by. And so now we can no longer point to that as a traumatizing experience. And when you have traumatizing experiences, this list that you see right here in front of you, these are all indications of having been traumatized. If I open up and read off the symptoms and the characteristics of somebody who has experienced trauma, you're going to see a whole lot of these right here on this very list. And so indicators of violence, according to the APA, are also and simultaneously characteristics, traits of a traumatized person. And it makes sense because when a person is exposed to trauma, one of the things that they automatically do is try to defend themselves. And that's what this is a list of. This is a list of the attempt to defend yourself one way or the other. Increased loss of temper. That means that you are now hypervigilant. That's what it's called when you read the trauma literature. It's hypervigilance, meaning that you are more vigilant than they say that you should be in response to some type of stimulation. That's increased loss of temper. Loss of temper meaning getting angry and prepared to fight. Frequent physical fighting, hypervigilance again. Increased use of alcohol or drugs. That's trying to mask the reoccurring thoughts of whatever it is you were traumatized by, or the violence that you're ready to do exact on somebody else or yourself. And sometimes it's even a numbing agent, so that when you do want to step in and commit an act of violence, you don't feel that empathy that's natural to you. Increased risk-taking behavior. That's when you start looking at the self-destructive aspect along with the substance use and abuse. When you start talking about increased risk-taking, what you're looking at is a person who is attempting to stimulate themselves or try to match their day-to-day engagements with the internalized stimulation anyway. And it could also be suicidal by some means. So if a person's risk-taking is, I'm gonna start driving fast and I'm drinking and I'm not wearing no seatbelts, that's actually suicidal. And suicide is internalized or self-directed violence, right? Increased risk-taking behavior. Right now, people don't see this as violence, but it is. A lot of our youth, or even some adults for real, I talked to somebody who was dang near 40 yesterday, and they're beginning to take risks, they're beginning to take great risks with their lives as far as sexual behavior is concerned. So a person who, and this person I was speaking to the other day, trying to, coach them and guide them, they were dealing with the fact that they had hooked up with 5 random people off a dating site and had sex with each and every last one of them, separate occasions, of course, but unprotected each and every time. That's violence, right? That's increased risk-taking behaviors, right? But that's the internalized type of violence, and it's masked in sexuality. And what they're pushing now is, sexual liberation and being sex positive, when in actuality, it's self-destructive. Declining school performance. A lot of times when you're talking about a traumatized person or a person that is engaging in violent behavior or going to start approaching violence, is they begin to detach from those things that are quote unquote important, or those things that should be important to them. And school performance, when we're talking about kids, is one of those things. Work performance is another one of those things, right? When a person begins to detach and stop caring about these things that are important in their lives or instrumental to their success later in life, then you understand, like, okay, this person is detaching for a reason. And if they detach, then it leaves them room, if they detach because they don't care, it leaves room for them to engage in other types of behaviors, right? They say the idle hands is the devil's playground, right? And so when a person is slowly pulling away from school, that's indicating that they're no longer caring as much about something. And when they stop caring as much about something, which is usually something that's important to the self-survival, then that means that they're leaning more towards the self-destructive side of things, right? And so if you see a child that's withdrawing from school, you see somebody, a loved one that's withdrawing from work or other levels of responsibility, that's an indication that they may be leaning towards not necessarily overt violence. Sometimes it's internalized self-destructive violence. Acute episodes of major mental illnesses. So the mental illnesses that are readily associated with violence, and within this context, is going to be things like depression, and it goes along with that withdrawn state. So a person who stops dealing with their hygiene, their eating habits change, their substance use habits change. So if it's a person who might have a drink every now and then, you notice that there's a bottle and they start stashing bottles in their room, or they start coming in the house smelling like weed, or start smelling like cigarettes more than smoking cigars. You see they're eating edibles. You see packages of edibles around. Their sexual behaviors start to change. All of these different things are indication that they might be slipping into a state of depression, maybe even bipolar, if it's the swing between the manic states and the depressive states, or even if they are just more aggressive, they hyper vigilant, very talkative, or totally withdrawn. All of those indications of mental health issues can also be indicative of a violent state. Second to last, planning how to commit acts of violence. It's really like, when you look at these school shooters and the parents always say, I had no idea. But then when you pay attention to like the Amazon account, you notice that they were buying books on violence. They were ordering like pellet guns, or, they were going more to the gun ranges, ordering guns, putting guns together. these are parts of plans to commit violence. A lot of the video games that the youth are playing right now, like those first-person games, what gives that perspective, where you literally see an assault rifle, any other military-grade weaponry, and they're actually learning how to use these weapons. I remember I was teaching the child and adolescent development course one time, and one of my students was actually in the Navy, and I was talking about the simulators. I was teaching from Amos Wilson's The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, and I talked about how video games can actually program children to become violent. And he just basically confirmed it by saying that they learn how to shoot and how to be calm. At one level they're trained in anyway, is using those same type of simulators. They call them simulators, but he said it's very close to the technology that are in the video games right now. And so it's helping the children to actually be able to devise and develop plans of how to commit acts of violence, because now they're strategically trying to take over a village, for example, strategically trying to survive, running through the hood. If you're talking about Grand Theft Auto, steal vehicles, rape prostitutes, shoot other people, right? All of these is helping them to have the information, the thought, the chunks of thought and information that can be used to develop a plan to exact violence in the real world. And then the last point here is going to be announcing threats or plans for hurting others. So it's similar to like when we're talking about suicide. There are different levels of suicidal disposition. One is just having suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideation, where the thought might cross the person's mind, right? And then there's the next level where the person is actually developing a plan to commit suicide. And so it goes from just having thoughts to actually thinking about how they would do it, where they're going to do it, who would they inform about it, how would they inform people, who do they want to find them, how do they want news coverage, what do they think about the social media presence is going to be if you're talking about kids and teenagers. And then you have the actual attempting of suicide. And so what you have here is the plan and then the announcing. So the announcing of committing acts of violence or plans of hurting other people, sometimes we'll dismiss that stuff. And sometimes it's masked in language. But I remember working at an elementary school over in Nashville back in the day as a school psychologist, and the teachers mistook the child's competitive disposition as a plan to commit violence against somebody. So this is kind of tricky at times. So the teacher overheard the kid saying, "Man, I'm gonna kill dude after school," and really thought that the child was talking about killing somebody after school. But in reality, they had set up a race, and the child was going to kill him in the race, meaning he was going to beat him really bad in the race, but they misunderstood the language. Now, depending on the culture and the context, which you're hearing these things, it could be a clear indication of violence about to be acted out. And I'm of the disposition to err on the side of caution, right? I'm of the disposition that says, if you think it's going to be something, be wrong checking on it rather than being wrong ignoring it and avoiding the conversation or avoiding the potential confrontation. I think I'm gonna stop there, Baba. But these are, some of the indications, some of the background, some of the context, and it does look different for us and them, especially with the way that the culture is going right now. We've been so heavily and deeply steeped into a violence-prone culture that it's really hard to distinguish between somebody just doing what's popular right now and actually seeking to commit acts of violence against themselves or others.
Hey, Brother Jeff, good thanks, brother. Great presentation, man. Great presentation. And this is a call to action forum, brothers and sisters. So if you see or notice anyone in your family or community that's anywhere near what those points that Jeff had mentioned, you got to make sure that they get some help from somewhere, because it's not going to stop just through osmosis. You got to have a program or a plan to address those issues that he just mentioned. Man, that was beautiful, brother. So stay around, Brother Jeff, and help us out with some of the other things that we'll be discussing as well. Next presenter is Brother SALIM ADOFO, Ward 8 ANC Commissioner in the Congress Heights area. Is Brother SALIM with us?
Yes, sir, I'm right here.
All right, you better be right here. How you doing, Bob?
I'm doing good. How y'all feeling?
All right, all right.
Give me 1 second and I'll be good to go.
Okay.
I'm out here in the community up in Tacoma.
Okay.
How y'all Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we hear you well.
All right.
Look like you're in a real dark room.
All right. Can you still hear me, Baba?
We hear you well.
All right. How y'all doing?
All right.
All right. So we had some great presentations that were before me. Big shout out to my big brother Cam, all the way from Chicago. How you doing, big brother? So before I could keep going, may I have permission from the elders to continue, please?
Yes.
All right, so I don't have one of those great big old PowerPoint presentations like everybody else. Y'all did a really good job. But what I do have is some information that I can share with everybody and how I see what the solutions can be and what they can look like. And so I once heard that, you know, we're in a space where we got self-determination and we got democracy. Democracy being we didn't self-determination being whatever we need in our community, whatever we want to have, we should have the right to organize for that. If you want a united Black community, then we got the right to organize as an effort of self-determination for a united Black community.
Mm-hmm.
Democracy being we didn't ask to be here, but we are here and we should get what our fair share of being here is.
Yes.
And so with me being in this seat, I think about what I read when I read By Any Means Necessary by Malcolm X, and he talked about the political philosophy of Black nationalism, the social philosophy of Black nationalism, and the economic philosophy of Black nationalism. And so I would say to the folks that are here, what's going on, big brother Terrence? Congratulations. I hear that you're now leading Alliance of Concerned Black Men. How do we utilize me being in this space? Right. So I will tell y'all now that I'm the chair of the commission. I have the ability to write and issue some checks. Not a lot of money, but I can write some checks. Right. And so I would say to our sisters and brothers that are in organizations, come to me with the program that you have and let me see how I can help underwrite that program or provide some in-kind resources from your tax dollars to implement those programs. So if folks are in the Association of Black Social Workers, or if you're an AB side, or if you're in United Black Community, or whatever organization you may be in, if you have a fiduciary agent because you don't want the organization you're in to get a check from the commission, or you have some other way, we can make that happen. And I think part of the solution, if you're in DC, is to see what resources that we have available to us and how we can strategically utilize those. I'm not going to be in this position forever, right? I may not get reelected, but the election is in November and I'm in this seat at least until January 1st, right? So I would say, Bobby Mama, if you have a program, call me, give me the budget for the program, let me help find funding for that. And I think that we're in a space to where we have folks that see themselves as saying, well, I'm a revolutionary, but I don't want to be taking any resources, you know, from the enemy. And I get it. But I would say if you pay taxes, if you got a cell phone, you already working with the enemy, unless Cam done came up with an independent network for us to communicate on that requires us to be off the grid, the European grid. And so I think we're not utilizing those spaces that we have when we get people in those places. I sat in a meeting with Brother Cam and the Ward 5 Councilman Katie McDuffie, and it was on a bill for reparations. But unless we have people in those spaces, then we can't get to some of those resources. And I'm not saying that that's the complete solution to our cause or to our movement, but it's just a tactic that we got to exercise. And I think we should look at it that way. I think that I need some more help from some folks who are in the community to come to me with programming. Allow me to take this expertise that Baba Senghor has and Mama and Kishi has and say, let me find a community center or rec center and have y'all come in there and teach Black history classes and teach about revolutionary action movement, teach about ANKOBIA, and teach about the RNA. And so these are ways that we can infiltrate the system because I'm in this space. And I'm not saying infiltrating and be the spook who sat by the door and think that's going to get us free, but this is where a lot of our children are. And if we forsake where a lot of our children are, then that's a large population that's going to be out here that's going to be acting in these violent ways that we talked about in the presentation because they don't have any African people in there engaging them. So I'm saying you got to figure out how to utilize somebody that's in this seat, somebody that can help you get space, somebody that can help write a check, somebody that can help get these resources until I can't. And then we got to figure out another tactic or another strategy. So with that being said, if I could get everybody to put their email in the chat, and I'm going to take your email and I'm going to email you the grant application that we have. Keep in mind, you got somebody that's the chair of the commission that sets the agenda that can put you on the agenda, and then that can help get your application through. I can't guarantee that everybody in there will vote for it, but I can sit and say that, hey, we carry some weight, right? So that's one. So I'm going to send that to you all, and then I'm going to send you spaces that we have available, right, that I can help you utilize for programming. And so then my ask of you all is to come back. What's today, Baba? Today is the
4/15.
4/15, right? April 15th.
Yeah.
So by May 19th, by Malcolm X Day, I want to have all of that stuff back. So then I can sit and say, okay, this is what we're going to do over the summertime or going into the fall. I think that's a practical solution that we can execute that won't require much more meeting.
Well, you look for mine tomorrow, brother.
Say that one more time.
You can look for my application tomorrow.
All right, so that's what I'm going to do, right? And I think that's just one thing. And I think another solution outside of utilizing folks that's in the system is, you know, what we're doing now, but to take it from amongst the usual suspects, right? I love Baba Rasafiq, but I need to see some other folks besides him, right? I need to be able to see him in Barry Farms. I need to see him at the Goodman League where those brothers are playing basketball, sitting there getting high, drinking, and doing a lot of things that, you know, if they channel their energy another way, could be more progressive. I need this meeting to take place at the intersection of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King over in Southeast DC, where the young girl got shot last summer, Nia Courtney, who was 6 years old and died. And we shouldn't have children dying at the intersection of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, Mama Malaya, right? I need the Malcolm X drummers and dancers to be there drumming and dancing on Malcolm X and Martin Luther King on May 19th this year, Mama, because we're going to take that park and create the Malcolm X Community Garden.
Okay.
So I just haven't sent the formal request in yet. But I think that when we take these conversations to those spaces, it changes the dynamic of how we view what activism looks like, how we view engaging community. But it's going to take some heart and some courage because some of them brothers are killers, right? Some of them brothers are shooters. And what I was told that Bobby Rice said, Black people kill Black people because they haven't been trained to kill white people. I don't know how accurate that is, but I do know that they killing Black people and they ain't been trained, right? Or at least they've been programmed to hate themselves and not see any value in themselves. And so I would say if somebody could put into a program and write it up, maybe for, 3 to 4 weeks of how we could do programming like this at the intersection of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I think that would be a solution and we can fund it.
Well, we'll work on that too, Salim.
All right. And if I could get Dr. Jeff's information in there so we could take that presentation and we can have some of those same things at Ballou High School and at Anacostia High School. Because you got the credentials to be able to go into those spaces. All right, so I want to take a couple of questions now. What we got? I know some folks got some questions.
We have questions at the end, Baba.
Yeah.
Oh, at the end? Okay.
Yeah. We got 3 more speakers, and after that, we'll take questions and hear from the audience. And yeah.
All right, so that's my time, and I'll be back at the end.
All right. We thank you so much, brother.
Yes, sir.
So you'll
Hey,
be
Bob,
hearing from us, I'm quite sure. Yes. Okay, STALEY Santisana. Next presenter will be Brother Chris Thomas from 100 Fathers Incorporated. And I don't have a bio on Chris, but he can tell us a little bit about himself. Young man, I know he's a young man because he told me, I think it was you I talked to last night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
You definitely talked to me last night. Not
Okay.
36 just yet. Again, I'm gonna give all the congratulations to my good brother Terrence, and he'll tell you a lot more about himself. But he's just a little older than me, and we're gonna start really hitting this violence at the ground running right now. This summer coming up. Before I get started, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Cam, Mr. Jeff. Thank you for even having me, Mr. Imamu. Let's get started with that there. I'm high energy. I'm gonna try to just keep everybody alert and awake, and I'm not gonna try to take up too much time. I know we still got other speakers. I'll start off with a few facts here. Fatherlessness. And let me at least say who I am. Chris Thomas, Community Engagement Officer for 100 Fathers Incorporated under the Honorable Franklin Malone. We teach a lot of different programs, obviously dealing with being a better father. And if you're not a father, and if you grew up in a fatherless home, basically. So we teach a lot of those programs. I'm gonna go over a lot of those in a second. A few other things that I do, especially since COVID, is definitely dealing with the food disparities and the elderly and the underserved communities. I've been mentoring with Catholic Charities to recently incarcerated young men for 9 years and counting right now through COVID also. Let's get to some hard facts here. 75% of long-term prison inmates come from fatherless households. 85% of rapists who are motivated through trauma and drama and anger come from fatherlessness households. 85% of children that they say have behavioral disorders, ADHD, they can't learn in school, come from fatherlessness households. 85% of kids in state institutions are from fatherlessness households. We already see the common denominator here. No fathers. Majority of those statistics are Black men. These are how some of these statistics are coming out. This didn't start yesterday. We know it won't end tomorrow, but maybe we can start to try to make it a better tomorrow when we start present today. Age 10 to 17 in high schools, dropouts, over 75% males and females come from fatherlessness homes. One of the big issues we have right now is education. When we try to take this and we correlate the violence with fatherlessness, Mr. Jeff said that. He articulated very well earlier. Mr. Cam, Mr. Salim, who I do a lot of community work with, I'll definitely give you all your credit and respect, Mr. Salim. It comes from the education. When you get right out of high school, no education, where you going next? What do these young brothers do? They get right to the streets. They get to the street because they relate to the streets. Those are most of the brothers that I mentor to. Some of these underserved, underprivileged, disenfranchised communities, the ones where we don't get the millions of dollars that the other cities get. We got to go out there as violence interrupters. We got to go out there face to face, man to man, no gun, no vest. Sometimes we got to step up and be the fathers. I have a 12-year-old daughter. One program that we did last under 100 Fathers Incorporated was in 2018, 2019. It's called Man the Block. I was one of the community team leads in the Anacostia area, where directly after the kids get out of school, number one thing they think about doing is fighting. It's a fashion show. Everybody get on Instagram. Everybody get on TikTok, clout, credit, all this other stuff, basically. So one of our things was to try to keep and deter the kids from the smoking before school, even 10, 11, 12 years old, the smoking after school, getting it from some of these men that are my age, which I had to witness. I'm trying to figure out where these kids are getting all of these different drugs. And then I see brothers my age giving it to them. These girls 12 and 13, and the boys are 12 and 13. And it's sad enough, your life is where it's at. Now, why are you going to do that to somebody else's adolescent, somebody else's child? But the reason they did it is because it worked. It worked because of peer pressure. It worked because those kids think that they cool. They think that that's just the way to go right now. And the brothers that are giving it to them, the suppliers, they know it's no father. If it was a father, they would have looked at him, turned the other way. It would have been real easy to do that. But when everybody else is going over there, you got to be in the in crowd. So since you got to be in the in crowd, you got to do what everybody else is doing. Few programs we teach. One of our best and biggest programs was all the way up until COVID, when it stopped, and that was the Boyhood to Manhood program at like they call it Big Bad Baloo in Southeast DC. The Council of Elders allowed me to even be a part of that program. You know, Mr. Malone, Mr. Ray Savoy, Mr. Pierpoint, I keep going down the list. They allowed me to even be in the room with them. But we had about 20 young men during the cafeteria hours, lunchtime hours. We were bringing different guest speakers every few weeks. We always had the ladies give them food just so we could keep their attention, but they loved it. At first they came in there cussing. They came in there fussing. They came with their heads down. They came with their pants down. They came with their phones out. It was a show. It was a real show. That was the first part of the year until they started to see a lot of us. We weren't playing with them no more. We understood that we weren't their father. And that was one of the first questions that Mr. Malone asked them. He said, everybody raised their hand who did not grow up with their father in the household. Out of 20 of them, 14 of them raised their hand. Then he asked them, how many of you all are the head of household, the man of the house? All 14 of them kept their hands up. We already knew that we had a big job ahead of us. We wish that we could have had even more than 20 of them. But to fast forward that, one of the biggest accomplishments that we saw was when we were able, the mayor's office gave us tickets to go see Giannis the Greek Freak down at the Capitol Center. And basically, the kids, we had a few of them didn't talk to us, and it wasn't school that day. So what we ended up doing was we all got down there. We were in the sweet boxes. They ended up calling Mr. Malone on the microphone and said, hey, I think we got a few of your gentlemen down here. And they said they're supposed to be a part of you and your organization. Mr. Malone was like, man, I didn't get no call, man. I'm not sure what to do. I said, man, let's go down and see who it is. He goes down there. He sees these 40 young brothers. These are some of the same 4 young brothers that were in a whole lot of disciplinary trouble at that school throughout that entire year. But after Mr. Malone talked to the lady, the representative, she said, man, these young brothers just came down here. They were respectful. They just said, we don't have our ticket, but if it's possible, Mr. Malone and 100 fathers, we're supposed to be here. And because of the respect that they saw that we've been displaying with them over the course of those several months, that's when Mr. Malone said, yeah, these are some of our young men. And they brought them right up there with no tickets. So that was just something that really hit home with us. And we took pictures and videos of it because Mr. Malone was just so emphatic about basically how they handle themselves without us being around. And we're not always going to be around. And that's one thing that we always try to say to them. One big issue that we try to explain to these young men in a lot of these programs is reactionary masculinity syndrome. Reactionary masculinity syndrome. We pretty much teach them that has to do with a lack of disrespect, a lack of authority, has to do with fatherlessness. It has to do with poverty. It has to do with drug abuse. We taught these young men a lot of these different things and characteristics and factors to why they might end up in another place if they don't start to change what's going on with their life right now. Some of them started to understand that. And with this program that we were doing, they would come to us after school. They would come to us before school. They would ask the other teachers. We only come once a week for that 1 hour, basically, but they were always looking forward to us. And we wish that we could have just extended it, and it could have been more of us, basically, where we could have been in more high schools where we were impacting a lot of these young Black men. Because again, the principal had hand selected a lot of these young men. And at first, some of them wouldn't come, but then after a while, their buddies was like, man, nah, they cool, man, they straight, man, bro, come on up in here and stuff. And that's how they talked to Mr. Savoy a few times. Mr. Savoy told him, and he said, hold up, Chan, hold up, brother. He said, I'm not one of them. He said, you see, I'm at the front of this classroom, brother. He said, I can be your father 3 times over. He said, so let's start with that respect factor, and let's keep that going. So these are just a lot of things that really took place again that we've been doing with the 100 Fathers. One thing I want to say basically is dealing with Father Week, basically, and that's going to be June 11th through June 19th, I believe. And with that being said, we have I'm sorry, I said June. Yes. We have that coming up, and with that, we have a whole week of events. That's one of our best weeks throughout the entire year. We have an entire week of events. We have coming up in May 22nd, and I'll make sure that you all have information on this. We'll try to get every father on here and every other father you know to John Burroughs. We are taking back our communities. We want over 500 fathers there. All races, all ages, all nationalities. That's May 22nd. I'll make sure that y'all have information on that. All these events will also be on 100fathers.org. One other thing that we're going to be doing this summer to try to consistently engage with young men is we have a fishing trip coming up. Yeah, we're gonna take out a certain amount of them on July 16th, and it's gonna be a boot camp fishing trip. So as some of these master fishermen are teaching them things, that's when we're gonna get a chance to talk to them and tell them about a lot of the different things that are going on, what's not going on in their life, and stuff like that. Basically, one big thing that we really talk about at 100 Fathers is we really just have to be more present in a lot of these young men's lives. When I talk to a lot of them, one of the big things they say is, it's not enough mentors. It's not enough people they can go to. It's not enough places. Like Mr. Brother Cam said, Brother Jeff said, mental health is serious in our Black community. The drug overdose is 2 times how much the gun violence is in DC area right now. In DC, a little under 1/3 square footage of Philadelphia. So if you do the math from last year when Philly was at close to 600 and DC had over 200, we would be right there at the same exact number, basically. But this drug epidemic is hurting us right now just as bad as a suicide epidemic. And one out of every 3 suicides comes from Black males. And Black males are 1/3 more likely to do this than white males in any other group. And it's the second cause of death in our adolescents from age 9 through 24 since 2015 and counting and present. So when we start addressing this epidemic of violence, we got to stick with these root issues. We got to address what's really going on with our young men here and our young women. TikTok is teaching a lot of them. Grand Theft Auto is teaching a lot of them. Call of Duty is teaching a lot of them. These kids love Call of Duty. Call of Duty is pretty much a war game. It's a fighting game. So what a lot of these young brothers do is stay on this all the time, and you have a microphone and you can pretty much go back and forth. But these are the 2 leading selling games. And the only reason I'm going to keep on saying Call of Duty and GTA stands for Grand Theft Auto. Mr. Brother Jeff, I believe, is the one who had mentioned this earlier. So I'm not going to stay deep into it, but Grand Theft Auto. Since last year, DC and PG County, it has been over 350 carjackings. 350 and counting. We're averaging almost 1 every single day in the district or PG County. Now, if this was happening just as a jump in and ride, little joyride, we'll be fine with it. But these last few weeks, some of these young brothers who have no guidance which the Call of Duty and GTA is giving them guidance, they're assaulting some of our seniors. They're putting firearms, ghost guns to some of the mothers in our lives. They're putting their guns to them. This has been happening since COVID, and it hasn't slowed down. It's only escalated, it's only increased, and it's only amplified since 2020. That's just one issue. But the thing is, they say that they don't have nothing to do. They took the basketball courts. Some of the rec centers got shut down. Some of the churches got shut down. These brothers didn't have nowhere to go. I talked to some of them. They said, what else do we do? They do what they see everybody else do. It's easy. It's easy to follow the crowd. 9 out of 10 people doing something. Why are you going to be the loner? Why are you going to go right and everybody else going left? It's easy. It's easy to follow them. So I don't want to stay real in depth on a lot of this stuff. I just want to at least get a lot of this out to y'all. Again, we teach the rites of passage, and a lot of the stuff that I just pretty much a few of the key factors basically, and a few of the key elements are some of the things that we teach. But a father, as we always state to these young men, a father is reasonable, he's responsible, and he's rational, and also he's available, he's active, and he's accountable. One big thing I said at one of my speeches at the 1,000-man march a year and a half ago in Annapolis was there's a difference between a Black father being available and active. Available means I'm just in the room. My daughter could be active means that I'm actively and consistently engaging in my daughter's life. So that, like I said, TikTok isn't teaching my child. Then I'm actually asking her every day how her day was, how her mental health is. We do have to start taking that a little more seriously now with our kids. A study came out that said kids under the age of 12 are actually stressed out. You know, I told my daughter, you don't know what stress is, but come to find out, I guess that I was inaccurate after doing my research. And we do have to take them a lot more seriously and just listen to them. One big part of mentorship is always about listening. When I go to those jails, those brothers talk and they say, I don't know what to do. When I get out here, my child mother, she don't want nothing to do with me. I haven't seen a kid in 2-3 years. What am I going to do? I say, well, contact 100 fathers, because we have a legal piece where we are able to talk to some of these young men 24 hours a day. If they get to a place where they are scared, even in their own neighborhood late at night, they can contact us. We have therapists. We have a lot of people dealing with fatherhood advocacy. So we're always available for these young men and these young adults. I just want to close out basically now with, again, giving y'all the website, 100fathers.org. I'll be remiss if I didn't shout out just some of our supporters, Moms Demand Action, dealing with gun violence, obviously Alliance of Concerned Men. Thank you again, Mr. Imamu, for having me, and I'll be ready for any questions after this, but we're always available. Mr. Malone received it's so many awards, I can't even go down the list of awards, basically. I'm on the political side now also. Again, the Council of Elders, thank you for at least allowing me to embrace everybody with my education and my knowledge. Thank y'all.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. And y'all keep up the good work with 100 Fathers. And we'll be with you June 11th through the 19th. And do you have a schedule of events that week? That done yet?
Yes, we have a schedule of events basically, where we have a fatherhood summit. We have a part where the mothers are going to come out. They're going to assist us also too, basically, because we think it's a joint effort. It's not just about fathers. It's just we're one of the key components that's missing. But we also always want to make sure that the mothers are in unison and on the same accord with us. Because if we're going to change this narrative, and we're going to change the statistics that's been occurring over these last few years, I don't know when COVID is going to stop, but I'm not going to make that an excuse for why we can't help change these young men's lives, because they need us every day.
Would you email us the schedule for the week? Yes.
Okay. I'll show you.
Okay, appreciate that. Thanks again for participating with us. Okay, the next speaker is Brother Terrance Staley. He's now the executive director, I believe, of the Alliance of Concerned Men. Brother Terrence with us?
Yes, I am, sir. And
give thanks, brother.
Peace and blessings, everyone.
Yes.
Chris, my brother, Salim, my brother. You know, it's refreshing to see you on this call. I always see you on the curb, working with me, you know, scraping our knuckles. And, you know, that's where, you know, our Father has for us to be. Our work is just as important as any preacher or any politician, or more importantly, you know, what we do, it manifests the grace that he put upon our lives to be able to execute this work. And we are all uniquely blessed. Those that are on this call, it's an honor to be on here with you. Brother Imamu, you know, thank you for walking this thing down. It takes a special talent to bring brothers of this kind together, you know, with all of our gifts and talents and our missions that we do. And to be able to bring this together is a blessing. Me personally, I look at this setting in this forum, and it makes me wholeheartedly optimistic on what can be. I'm looking at our generational stack here. The elders that you're probably familiar with consistently, but you know, we're not in my generation. We don't see you and we don't feel you, but you're here right now. So this is an optimistic approach for me, and I'm glad to be in this forum to where I see that you exist, that you're here, and that you are, you know, you are still mentoring us in what we do and supporting us. So when we speak about violence in the community, I am solution-based in it, but I will talk about some of the ills that have caused violence, but also have many solutions for you. And these solutions are what we are currently enacting in the community, in the District of Columbia and abroad nationally. And there's different models that have been created to be able to execute this. The Alliance Concerned Men has been around for a long time, over 30 years. Mr. Tyrone C. Parker and 5 other brothers, they came together when his son was killed at Crystal's skating ring. And they said they had to do something. And this is when DC was the murder capital, you know, 456 murders. When they came together, they got over a Benning Terrace, right? You know, Simple City, if they called them, right? But it's not simple. It's Benning Terrace. And then also 7th and O, where the violence was rampant. And they were able to merge a truce in those 2 areas, the 2 hot spots, one in Northwest, one in the Southeast. But we know crime was rampant across the city due to the crack epidemic. But the Alliance Concerned Men, you know, strategically created these truths, and the murder rate went down to 86 from 456 in 2012. And that's the work from the Alliance historically. So these models are a staple in the district. They've been emulated and transformed and replicated across the nation. And you know, the district should receive the credit for making this piece happen. So transform, I mean, fast forward today, 2022, we're still doing the work. When we talk about violence with our youth, you know, I could say the older generation, y'all knuckled up, and y'all would scrap with your hands. And after that scrap, if you got knocked out, you dropped down, got back up, and you could probably go to school the next day, right? Fast forward to the 80s, somebody started to bring a knife, right? So you couldn't just knuckle up, and somebody had a knife, you might get cut. So then everybody started bringing knives, right? Survival of the fittest. And so now if you're scrapping and you don't have if you have a knife, but you're not willing to be cut, you bring a gun. So rules have been broken, you know, generational rules have been broken on what conflict is feasible, the rules of engagement. And now these youth are using guns because they're so readily accessible. You know, ghost guns is a epidemic. You know, I don't know if you're aware of exactly what ghost guns are, but it's untraceable weapons. Ghost guns are guns without a serial number. So in my past life, you know, I would have got online and looked up different pieces from different salesmen and women that sell weapons. And I would have bought a piece from each one. And none of those pieces have a serial number on it. I get back to the house, pull up YouTube, and put that weapon together. And that's what a ghost gun is. And that's how easy and simple it is for our youth. And this is exactly what they're doing to get their weapons. So ghost guns is an epidemic that's going on in our communities, and they're using them as if they're knives and if there's fists, and they're murdering each other over territories, over petty beefs. But the problem is hopelessness in our community. You know, they don't feel like they have any options. You know, they're born in the pit hole of a systemic racism without any options, no employment. Their parents are on drugs. I'll give you a story to let this hit home. Two of my youth that we provide assistance to, they're currently homeless. And I dropped them off at McDonald's probably around 7 or 8 o'clock when I leave the office, but they come to our groups on Wednesdays and Fridays for conflict resolution training. So when we merged the truce back in 1991, we sent some crew members from 7th and O up to American University, and they did a study on using our skills of what violence mitigation looks like. And that study turned into the conflict resolution manual, Train the Trainer. And we are copywritten in partnership with American University. So last year in the Greenway community was the mass shooting that took place. I'm pretty sure you all remember when 21 people got shot. That was right around the corner from our office. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, we had not received any funds to be able to provide resources to violence interruption services in our community. But once that happened, doors opened. So then we started providing the conflict resolution manual, Train the Trainer, on Wednesdays and Fridays. And they teach, you know, triggers and soothers, strengths and weaknesses, visible identity constructs, visible identities, the social construction of identity groups, right? Cultural empowerment, teach them about their history, who they are, so they can give each other more grace to mitigate the conflict inside the home before they step out the door, so they can give their brother or sister more grace. And so we started giving this session, the first session, and a young man came up to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Terrence, you can pull it to the side." So I said, "Yeah, let me talk to you." And he started talking to me, lifted up his shirt, and he had 15 staples in his stomach. He had just been shot. And he was like, "Mr. Terrence, I promise I'll never miss a session." I was like, "Don't worry about it, brother. Go ahead and in there, get some pizza, you know, enjoy the session. You know, you've done nothing wrong here." And it struck me. I said, this young man is inside the Alliance of Concerned Men office getting conflict resolution training after he's been shot 48 hours later, instead of retaliating. So this speaks to the presence of who we are in the community and what we do. So we went back into there, and we were initially only supposed to have 20 people on the caseload, and we ended up having 41 people on the caseload. And so he went back into the room, and they were all in the room talking, and we said, you know, once you come to the Alliance office, we're a family. So whatever petty beef that you have on the outside, that doesn't rock in here. You know, we gave you the opportunity to come in here. It's a safe place for us, so it's a safe place for you. So once that comfortability was established in a room amongst their peers, those that are like them, you know, our staff is predominantly prior incarcerated. And so the young man stood up and said, "I want to say something." He said, "You know, I was shot a couple of days ago, but, you know, I'm in here getting conflict resolution training." And, you know, and then another young man stood up, and he had been shot. They had 2 youth in our office that had been shot receiving conflict resolution training instead of outside retaliating against each other. And, you know, these are the skills, and these are the classes, these are the things that the Alliance of Concerned Men are doing. We go to the victim and the perpetrator of violence, and we put them in the same room. And we merge peace. We do restorative justice, and we give them skills to be able to mitigate violence, like I said, inside their own homes and inside their communities. And so that's just the conflict resolution. We also have cure violence model off of 4th and 6th Street. So when the pandemic first started, I'm sure y'all are familiar with Highland Terrace and 4th and 6th Street. And when the pandemic first started, Highland was the murder capital of the District of Columbia. We were able to, over Zoom, establish the truth. So they went from the murder capital of the district and 124 days of no shooting at all, no shootings at all. Not no deaths, but no shootings at all, going from the murder capital to no shootings. And that's just some of the work that we do off of 4th and 6th Street in our Cure Violence. And Brother Javon Davis, who's our program manager down there. Then we also have the Credible Messenger Initiative, where we have 20, actually now 33 youth that are assigned to us through the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services. All these youth have different infractions from rape, right? From murder, multiple murders, robberies, armed robberies. We have one youth, age 13, who had 44 armed robberies in 1 year. And these are the youth that we have on our caseload. And so we service them, we mentor them, we provide them a suite of services. We meet them where they are. We go inside the YSC, we go inside of New Beginnings. My staff, they go inside of the jails consistently twice a week, each staff, right? So our presence is known, and we start mentoring where they are. So when they come out, they have a new frame of mind. They have a new religion. They're Muslims, they're Christians, right? They have an obligation to their family. They come back and get their education. And don't think that our youth are not intelligent. We have the youth that had 44 robberies is a genius on paper. The whole time while he was inside the institution, he had a 4.2 taking college classes, right? It's the energy transformation. It's the new way of life that has to be given to them, a way of peace, right? Our youth are extremely intelligent, more intelligent than we are or will ever believe. They are smarter than all of us. They just need a new way of living, new hope. So with the Cure Violence model that we have and Incredible Messenger models, some of these are put into different boxes. And of course, when you do a project in the city, there's certain guidelines that you must stay in. But we've been blessed to now have the OG initiative Violence Free Zone in the Greenway community where the mass shooting was. And it's a different approach. It's a village approach to public safety. It's a cultural approach to public safety. We know our ancestors handled things in a humanistic approach. And that is something that's foreign to this newest generation. But we are a community in the Greenway community. We have Brother Earl, who served 47 years in the federal penitentiary, who's our director from the Greenway community. We have Brother Larry McMichael, who did 17 years, been shot 23 times, who's the deputy director, also from Greenway. We have Brother Carlos, who is the rapper in the neighborhood, the famous rapper off of Minnesota Avenue. And he brought in the 14 to 24-year-olds that are currently receiving conflict resolution training. And these 14 to 24-year-olds are the victim and the perpetrators of violence, the ones that are shooting and have been shot. So if you're looking at how we're stacking this up, that is 4 generations already of individuals in one specific geographic location saying the same thing: conflict resolution, cultural empowerment, right? Violence free zone, right? So now we're partnering with Sousa, which is the middle school in Greenway, in the same geographic area, same geographic area. Then we have Kimball, which is the elementary school. So that's 6 generations, all saying conflict resolution, all being culturally empowered for a violence-free zone. We have kids riding down the bikes, riding on their skateboards because they're free to do so because it is a violence-free zone and the community says it's a violence-free zone, not us. It takes the community to do that. We're just changing the narrative. So this is the type of approach that we are doing in the Greenway community. We foresee a violence-free zone Minnesota Avenue corridor, right? And this is not far-fetched, gentlemen. This is statistically proven right now, today. So Brother Roger Bell, who's in 37th place was a murder capital of DC earlier this year. Roger Bell and Life Deeds is over there providing family services. That murder rate has dropped. 37th Street is where Kimball and Sousa is. And that's the middle school and the elementary school where now they're getting safe passage. And that's also in the Greenway community. So then we have Greenway, violence-free zone, connecting from the 37th place down Minnesota Avenue. Minnesota Avenue now, it also connects to Fairlawn, where there's Cure Violence father factors out there providing violence intervention services. Also, Brother Wali, who's in 19th Street, which is connected to them, providing violence interrupter services. We're applying for Fairlawn to provide the conflict resolution manual, train the trainer, all the way up to Good Hope Road. These systems, these approaches, this village approach to public safety can work, and it is working. We just have to have opportunities to execute it. And we are applying for these opportunities. So I don't want you to think that there is hopelessness, but it's not the end of the road. There are people like myself. There are young people like the youth assigned to DYRS that have transformed their lives, that are putting in the work, that are saving their communities, that are using some of the same skills from the ills that you have identified on this call. So there is execution happening, and they just need your support to understand the cultural piece. So like Brother Salim said, come down to MLK. Come down to MLK and speak this word. Let them know the truth. Come to the Alliance of Concerned Men. Come to 100 Fathers. We have the youth. We have the demographic. We have our people. We touch over 100 perpetrators and victims every single week. If the knowledge stays here, then what is the hope for our people?
Mm-hmm.
So we're blessed to be able to know that you exist. We're blessed that you have the information, the approaches. Now we ask that we connect the dots, that you come to us as we have come to you, and in the physical sense, and provide this to the people that we have waiting for the information that you have to deliver.
All right, Brother Terrence, thank you, brother. As we mentioned earlier in the forum before we, right after we started, that this is a call to action forum. So that means that we have to provide some type of action to assist in helping to make sure that we put an end, or we put a reduction in this circle of violence that's plaguing our communities around the world, around the country specifically. And some of the groups we mentioned, we have here today, 100 Fathers, the Alliance of Concerned Men. They have been working for years, working on this problem. So they're gonna need help. So the call to action is to help these brothers and sisters, brothers who are helping others. That's part of the call to action. But I want to make one little quick thing before what he mentioned about fighting at the end of school. That took me back when I was in junior high school, my first fight. That was at Douglas Junior High School, and it was a twin. I know the guy's name, but I'm not going to mention it, but he and I got in a fight. And at that time in DC public schools, you had to stay in. I don't know y'all ever remember that term, staying in. If you get caught, that means you stay in after school till 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever time the principal tell you to stay in. And we both stayed in. And, after we left school, we walked home together. You know what I mean? Almost like nothing ever happened, man. And I thought that was, I always look back at that and say, damn, how in the world did that happen, And I know something like that is really rare today, but man, I thought that was awesome. He and I walking home after that, So that's a little something happened to me. I was 13 years old, well, 12 years old. Man, that was 60 years ago. 62, something like that. Well, anyway, we have one other speaker, Brother Dr. ATIBA COPPOCK of the group called ANKOBIA. I'm sorry, not ANKOBIA, ANKOBIA, I'm sorry. And he's also a member of the DC Pan-African Council of Elders. And his brother been working as long as I have. because when I came in this community, he was already a member of this community. Brother ATIBA COPPOCK. Baba ATIBA.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Sorry, it's a little bit dark in here, but just warms my heart to get everything okay. To hear all these brothers doing all of this good work. And as you know, as I said, I was part of. Well, we go way back because we go back to Ujima Shule.
Right.
So that's
Way
why
back.
way back. But in terms of the kinds of work that I've been doing for the past 30 years, I've been doing rites of passage work with adolescents here in the District of Columbia. And so it's always good to hear what the new generations are doing. And with ANKOBIA, we are a Pan-African fraternal and sororal society that really is it's a long-term rites of passage group. We do rites of passage for all of our members. So everybody is going through the rites as a member, because you're working with your own children, you're working with everybody else's children. And so we look at rites as a lifelong activity that people will go through. And we focus between October and April, on adolescent rights programs. So as I said, that's what we've been doing for the last 30 something years here. In addition, we've worked with providing curriculum and books and stuff like that for people who have been interested in it. My wife, who's an ancestor now, has done lots of work in doing rights for young women and women. And I've worked primarily with boys and males. Although I was asked to talk about rites of passage, I think that everybody basically has a really good grasp of what rites is all about. And what we do with ANKOBIA is to talk about it's more of an inoculation kind of activity. It's not to say that all of our children, all of the boys who go through and the girls don't have problems, but it's not to the same degree as some of the issues that we've heard tonight. We had our graduation ceremony last Sunday. Yeah, last Sunday. We had 9 brothers go through and I think it was 5 or 6 girls go through. But over that time, we've gotten a lot of expertise in designing and conducting rites. And as we said, we are a Pan-African group, and we do rites. And we know that there are different kinds of rites that one can do. But we're looking to build, turn the young people, help them to develop their sense of Africanness, so that they are going to become warrior healers, warrior builders. We would have a focus on having a larger world scope, so that they're going to rebuild our communities, take it to the next level. So we have, we started back in 1990 was our first group that came out. And out of that, we've had one of the most notable persons whom everybody will realize or recognize their name is Ta-Nehisi Coates, went through our rights group. His father, Paul Coates, is out of Baltimore and is the publisher of Black Classics Press. So one of the other things that I also do is I'm on the editorial board for the Black Child Journal, and we have called for papers twice a month, twice a year, and dealing with topics of concern to the Black community. So we have people come out and, well, submit materials to us for their, for it to be distributed to the larger African community that are interested in works that are done that way. The two publishers are Usini Perkins out of Chicago and Paul Hill out of Cleveland, East Cleveland, who is with the National Rites of Passage Institute. So we stretch a lot. We have a lot of expertise in that area, dealing with different types of rites of passage. Paul himself used to do rites of passage programs in schools. I did rites of passage programs, as I said, as a result of ANKOBIA, which is family-based primarily. One of the brothers who's on the call here, Nana Kweku Carr, we did some work together at Ma'at Institute way back in the I don't know, 70s, I guess it was. We did some rites of passage. So we've done it in mental health settings, and it's good to see that. And another colleague of mine is Baba Yao Inan is on the line as well. So, and of course, I have a good acquaintance with Dr. Jeff Menzie. But the point is that we are all in this for the long run, on the long haul. And I really don't have a lot to say at this time. I was just, I wasn't quite sure what our audience would be like, but I'll be open for some questions if people have any questions for me, and that potential that, you know, as I said, we've written books, we do journal articles, we, in fact, our current call for papers is for our next issue is going to be culture and the Black child. So anybody who's interested in getting some information about that and perhaps submitting an article for publication, that would be fine. In terms of the district itself, right now, you know, we're open to working with folks. Normally I work through the Council of Elders, but you know, we can see what type of assistance or ways that we can be of assistance to the community or of specific individuals or institutions at this time. So that's I think that's the best way to leave it open. And again, if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Hey, Bob ATIBA, thanks again for that presentation, brother, letting the community know about some of the work that you do, working with the youth. And as you say, the rites of passage is not just for men, but it's for our young girls as well. Because when we do that, we build community, and we must take a holistic approach in building community. We just can't have the brothers taking rights and the young ladies are not. So we take that holistic approach to
right. I want
community.
Right, and I wanted just to say that we recognize that people are dealing and providing rights where the needs are. So some are dealing within wherever our people are located, then they're dealing with rights in that same sense. Normally, since we are dealing with adolescents who are still in school, we're just dealing with that population. But we have worked with incarcerated. Brother Paul Hill has worked with a group of incarcerated brothers, I think for the last 20, 25 years. And so the point simply is that we are available to provide assistance as folks call on us, for one of the old time folks anyway, who's kind of limited in transportation, but nothing else.
Right. Well, give thanks, good brother, for all your work, man. So at this point, we'd like to open it up for the participants online with us on the call to hear if anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns. And also our guests, if there's something that you thought you left out that you want to include, feel free to share your thoughts and concerns. So this is the part of the program where we say this is the call to action, where we talk about some of the things that we can and should and must do in order for us to help reduce that tide of violence that's plaguing our communities around the country here. Yes, Kweku Car Sante.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to share this. It's been said over and over again, but I just want to share it again. When we begin to talk about community organization, I think it's formed like this calls us to grow closer together. It should shows that we should support each other's output. We should look at the importance of a different type of education for our children. And since time is hard, we should look at food distribution made part of our program.
Okay.
And when you look at the business part, I think it's very important to look at brother, I don't see his name, start talking about jobs from the former education. One of the things that I feel that took a hard part of us, our children, is when they took away the school training for trade. And we need on-the-job training now too. And if we could look at the government, I think the government should provide grant to organizations like Brother Salim talked about. I think we should be able to get reports that's happening against our community, as well as scout statistics that they have in that archive that affect us. Thank you.
Yes, very good. Good idea. Now, as far as the trades, if anyone interested in the trades, they can give me a call. I'm teaching the trades over in Trinidad area at Four Walls Korean Technical Education Center. We teach HVAC, electrical, and we also have a class for more advanced students called Stationary Steam Engineering. A lot of money involved in that, brothers and sisters. Being a stationary steam engineer, and we prepare students to get their licenses, first, third, and sixth class license. So if you know anyone interested in that, please give us a call. And you know, one of the things we have to always do is try to make sure that we connect and know where the resources are, so people can get connected. So that's one thing, and you couldn't have said it any better. When they took the trades out to school, they took a lot out of our community. Okay, anyone else has something they'd like to share? Everybody speak at one time now.
Or questions, Baba.
Any questions, comments?
And maybe we can bring all the speakers back in, all in, in the spotlight, so everybody can see everybody that spoke, and if anybody has any questions for them, or if they have anything else to add, we can do it at that point. How does that sound?
Sounds good, Bob.
Okay. If the presenters could put their video back on, if you don't mind, so let's see if we can do a little mini panel, I guess. So
I am available, brother.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I'm available also.
Beautiful. But Brother Ken, it won't let me add you unless your video is on. So you gotta put your video on and keep it on so I could add you to the panel. I'm trying to see who else might. Beautiful. Thank you.
And we're gonna do our best also as an organization, United Black Community, as in providing this information to different segments of the city where it's needed. You know, all of the information that was shared and the resources and all the things needed and necessary to build that community.
So if anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask questions. Or if any of the panelists have any questions or comments or any additional thoughts after hearing each other, please feel free to share as well.
Just want to say that I added the scans of Dr. Akbar's disorders and put them in the chat as images. So you all should be able to access them and download them.
Very good, Bob. Yes, because all this information we're going to combine and try to put it out to the community where it's needed. So, yeah.
So yeah, I would just like to share one of the things that we're begin planning is to assemble a group of brothers that are organized in their communities around the country on this issue of guaranteed basic income and as reparations to address public safety. So we reached out to brothers in like 10 or 12 of the largest cities with Black populations who are down with this particular issue and moving it forward. So we'll be having some planning sessions, but I definitely want to include Brother Chris and Brother Terrence in the group in DC, and anyone else, if you know someone in another city, if you want to, I'll send you an email. You get your email from Bobby and Mamu, and we can connect.
Thank you, Brother Howard.
Hello.
I look forward to it. I'm sorry.
We had a young lady, who was that?
It was Zatiti.
Oh, Zatiti, how you doing?
I'm excellent.
Good, good.
Yes, I wanted to just say that it feels like to me that we need to organize against these ghost guns to get some legislation on the ground. Those ghost guns are going to further roll us back in time. That we really have to jump on that. Also, I didn't hear much discussion about diet, about spirituality, not necessarily religion, but spirituality in terms of alleviating violence. And also, I think that, I just came back from 7 months in the motherland, and I've made a commitment to make, long stays in the motherland a part of my identity. And when we look at some of the countries in the motherland, we see the same phenomenon with violence. So, we have to wonder at some point, is this strategic? In terms of the guns and the ammo and, and the destabilization of the people and their culture and their roots and their identity, so that they can steal their mineral resources, or if not steal them, then take them for very little money, because you got all this disruption going on. All one has to do is just look at the Congo. Okay. Now, in other countries that are highly religious, like Zanzibar, the level of violence is way down.
That'd be a result of what?
Excuse me?
I said, that's the result of what?
I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's because their Islam is such a part of their cultural identity, and they move like that. Everybody's taught to move in peace. So, I mean, if you do something wrong, they're going to cut your throat. But as long as you move with the dictates of the culture, everything's cool.
What country you said? Zambia?
Zanzibar.
Oh, Zanzibar. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just think our discussion should always be global with Africa. I think that's always, that's always got to be a piece of the discussion, a piece of the research. We got to include Africa in this. And this is the last thing I'm going to suggest. I think that Africa is very healing for us and very healing for our children. So I think creating scenarios where we can get some of our kids out of the hood for a month, 2 months, or the summer, and we take them to Africa, either to do some work or to do a little bit of travel, to do some research. I mean, but I just think that those programs are very necessary because our lack of identity is connected to Africa.
Well, Chris Rock's wife years ago took a group from New York. These are brothers and sisters from Bed-Stuy, all throughout New York, Bronx. And they were kind of, they've been there, and they went to South Africa. And I saw it on, they showed it and they said, some of these brothers, and when they saw some of the things that they saw, they couldn't believe, and they broke down and cried. I mean, they broke down and literally cried at some of the things that they saw, and they thought they were ready, but they weren't quite ready. So people are taking brothers, young people to the continent to witness and experience some of the things that's going on there. But you don't hear a lot about it, but it is happening. And I agree with you that maybe it should be more, and it might be, hopefully it's forthcoming. And as far as the diet, anyone like to talk about that?
My brother, how you doing?
Brother Akmal, greetings.
Yeah,
man.
how you feeling, man?
Oh man, I'm good.
And to all of the people that's on the call, one of the pieces is that people are not looking into is the fact that garbage that is being called food that our children is eating is actually increasing their violence because of the fact that they're not getting nutrients and the blood's not going to the brain and allowing the brain to deal with thinking. The other piece of that is the fact that we have so many chemicals in the food that the body is not able to extract any of the nutrients. And so, and then the other part of that is that the majority of the people who live in the community live in food deserts. And that's one of the things that we really have to figure out. How do we correct that? How do we bring fresh produce into the community and get rid of the sodas and the junk food, because what they're eating basically is firing them up, which is that sugar. And when you take in sugar, you make it so that the body's not able to absorb B vitamins. And when you don't, and when your body doesn't accept or absorb them B vitamins, what happens is that now the central nervous system isn't functioning to its optimum. So now you have all of this stress on the nerves. And that stress now is the factor of what's causing our children and our adults to not have the functioning of their brain to have consciousness of peace within themselves. And so, I've been talking about this, for years, about what we need to do to first get the food deserts done, get them out of the community, get that fresh produce there. Second, begin to get our children to stop sucking on lollipops and eating Cheetos and all of those kinds of things, because of the fact that what that's doing is that's disturbing the liver. One of the things that we're going to see now, as we get into spring, we're going to see more violence. And the reason we're going to see more violence, because this is the liver season. The liver has to deal with the fact of the central nervous system and how our brain functions. The second part of that is that the liver, its emotion is anger, anxiety, depression, suppression. And so as we move through the spring, we're going to see more violence. The other part of that is the fact that because these children and adults are eating so much sugar, it's deplacing the healthy bacteria in their gut, which is their second brain. And so because the gut is not functioning, not sending the neurons or the chemicals needed to the brain, the serotonin and those kinds of elements, what now is happening is that now if you bump into somebody, they want to fight. And so, you know, we need to work on eating. We need to work on, and what I call it is when the elbow bends, the mouth flies open. And so we need to really work on that in all of the things that we do to establish the basis of us as African people being in harmony with ourselves and with nature, so that we can reduce the violence. And many of you who I see on the call, you know, you've been around. I'm gonna be nice. You've been around at least a half a century.
All right, Baba, you are being nice.
And so, you know, if we go back to when we were eating foods as children, the food had taste, it had nutrients, and it didn't cause us to have so much violence.
Right.
And so we have to begin to look at that. Brother Oduno talks about, you know, gardening in the community. We need to begin to see how we can get grants to do those things. You know, that's a piece that we get these young men who are killing each other, get them to start to look at gardening, see if we can get them to do that. You know, I mean, the 100 men, you know, you got to take your hat off to them and concerned Black men and all of these organizations that are looking to begin to assist our brothers and our sisters in establishing health in terms of not killing each other. And so in doing that, all of them need to put in some sort of educational component that deals with eating habits. We don't have diets. A diet, what is a diet? Look at the word, diet. Who the hell is dying? Us. Okay. I mean, so folks need to be able to do that. If at any point you need my assistance, and I've been doing this over 50 years, you know, I can give you my information and you can contact me. But I'm very much interested in the fact that, you know, we need to do something before us elders leave the planet, to make sure that when we leave some soldiers here who's going to take care of our women and our children in the future. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Be well, enjoy your life, and peacefully walk in health.
Hey, thank you for those kind words, Brother Akmal. Thank you, man. So diet is important, as we know.
Yes, and Imamu, I just wanted to say that I'm also available. I'm the author of a book entitled Red, Black, Green, and Vegan, where I deal with healthy eating. The book was written for young people. The second book, which was written for even younger, like middle school age, is called What's in Your Lunchbox? So I've got several books out for kids, and I'm every place online I can support. You just call me.
Okay, very good. Very
Mama,
good.
can you please add your email address or website, if you have one, to the chat?
Yes, I will. And I just, let me share this with you guys. Okay, as I said, I spent 7 months in Africa. And I'm available to talk about that too at some other point. But what I noticed is because we got our food from the farm, from an organic farm. Food arrived, twice a week from the farm. So we're only eating organic food that is, 20 miles away. And so what I noticed is that the whole aging process started to go backwards. Everybody who was eating that food and, was an expat from someplace else started aging in reverse. So that to me was phenomenal. And that's why I'm going to be advocating that, all of us try to spend at least 1 month in the motherland until we can spend longer and longer periods of time there. 1 month every year, ideally when the sun is at its lowest point here, so you can intake that sunlight. You can consciously intake those sun codes that the sun is throwing off, not just the light, not just to get a tan, but to try to really extract understanding, wisdom, and intelligence from the sun. Because you'll get to a point where, like here, we run to the sun, but after you stay in Africa for long periods of time, I find myself running away from it because it was too much.
More intense.
It was intense.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Now we have a guest that we haven't heard from tonight, and she knows who she is. She was the first person I invited to participate in this forum, but she referred us to Brother Cam.
Baba and Mama, before you, I know you getting ready to call. Before you call her, can we hear from Brother Chris or Brother Terrence about the food aspect, the food desert aspect, because we know it's connected. In terms of some of the work that Alliance of Concerned Black Men and 100 Men are doing, if anything, along the lines of, because we do definitely know that the center of the violence in our community, somebody mentioned Malcolm X and MLK, the center of violence in our community is often the center of those deserts. So just wanted to see if you all maybe had something going, or a thought, or maybe even a request. We have so many experts on that subject on right now. I just wanted to hear from you all on that before we bring in our illustrious sister to be named later.
She knows who she is.
I'm gonna say just a few things on it, and then probably a request. Thank y'all both for all the information y'all just gave. I'm just getting into in depth with my health now, but a few things just to let y'all know and really, really scrutinize it. The USDA, the FDA, they allow a lot of this food to come to our stores. They allow this food to be given to us in the school systems and sold to us under the table. And we know that it's contagious. One thing that Trayon White says in Ward 8, if you eat trash, trash is going to come back out your mouth, just like the brother said. We're eating garbage. This food has nothing but hormones and steroids in it. My daughter's only 5'4". She's 5'4" and she's 12. I'm in these high schools, these kids are 2 times the size of me because of food is accelerating their mind. Now, why do you think they think about drugs so much faster? They think about sex so much faster. Even if we get to the social media piece of it, again, but the food disparities in the Ward 7 and the Ward 8 communities, you have to be in a close proximity to get to it. So again, it's just like and I don't know if he's still on here, but I got to give him all the credit to this and Mr. Terrence, because Salim boycotted the liquor store at MLK and Malcolm X. And I was out there with him, and we're trying our best to keep these young brothers who we know what they're doing out there and all their practices. We'll leave it at that right now. But it's no healthy food there. It's nothing. It is soda. It is carbonation. It is damaging your mind. But at the end of the day, it's available. It might be EBT. It might be free. It's thirst quenching for the time being. It's $1.20. And it's no different from a beer. If you're under 21, you're gonna get a soda. Because what? It's available. It's easy. It's fast. You're over 21, you're going to get the CBD stores. They're everywhere around here. But again, we don't have the healthy fruits, the healthy vegetables. And I don't want to say that the parents are at fault here, basically, but we do get what's available. We're going to get the Chick-fil-A if we're around. We're going to get the Grubhub, the Uber Eats. I haven't seen nobody to say, I want some okra from Uber Eats. I ain't seen nobody to say, I want some slices from Grubhub, but you definitely gonna get those greasy fries, you're gonna get the cheesesteak, you're gonna get the wings with the bubble sauce, and it does taste good. So I don't want to go really in depth. I'm not an expert on everything basically, but what I have been hearing lately, the USDA and the FDA, they do not put the warnings on it. We're the only country with so much violence, actually, statistically. The only country with so much food illnesses that kill us under the age of 45. I just had several friends at 35 had strokes. I got people still 95 that I have a cup of coffee with in the morning. So we strokes, 35, 36, kind of good health, and we could go down the list of stuff here basically, but I don't want to, be long-winded and stuff. But health is very important. I will say this, just me personally, I've started taking mine more seriously. I go very hard, no sleep, I'm a millennial, I'm always trying to get so much done. But at the end of the day, things happen for a reason. And when you're starting to hear these things, you got to take heed to some of them. And I'm very influential. And obviously the way I talk confident, and it took years of this to get to this. But, I started eating the gingers and the vinegars and more water. And my father's a diabetic, and my mother passed from breast cancer almost 5 years ago and stuff. So when you see all the disparities of what is taking our Black men and our Black women out, it doesn't take all the other races out at 40 and 45 and 50. The age deficit is consistently dropping right now. And we could say because of suicide and the gun violence and other things. But again, we get what's available. But what do you do, unfortunately, when those grocery stores are not close by? And then they inflate the prices of the Giants and the Safeways. We don't have the Harris Teeters in the Ward 8s. We don't have the Wegmans in the Ward 7s. We get whatever they give us out there, and it's inflated because of all the other things. And then they wonder why we don't have the Moms and the Whole Foods and stuff like that. So I'm gonna pretty much just stop there. I know Terrence has a lot of stuff that he wants to say. I just do hope that that garden is possible. I don't know how it'll work if we get grants to have stuff in King George, and we take trips out there for these kids to learn how to garden for themselves in a survival mode. If the internet does break down or the store doesn't take your debit card, how are you gonna eat? Go get that pear off the tree, go plant that vegetable. What is a hoe? What is a rotiller? And stuff like that, basically. But when you grow up inner city, you don't know a lot of these things. Whatever that corner store, whatever 7-Eleven got, however much my car can get me, it's what I'm going to eat for the time being, basically. So, but we definitely need something done there. And I definitely thank both of the elders again. Thank you for allowing me and Terrence to even have a voice on here. I have to make sure I say that every single solitary time, because where I'm at now is from listening to from a lot of you all. Like I said, I have cups of coffee with people over 90 years old and stuff, and they used to be triple my age. So it took a lot for me to shut up, even though I do talk a lot, but it took a lot for me to shut up and start to listen and understand wisdom. So that now when I listen to what you all both said, I can go tell this to another adolescent, basically, so that again, me and Terrence just hope that we make it to you all's age at the end of the day. And we just blessed for you all allowing us to talk. Go ahead, Terrence. Thank you, brother, for respect.
If I could just jump in for a minute. The way the FDA programs our children to eat, I wrote the position paper for the Prince George's County Head Start as I was their consultant. And we had a meeting one day with the state, with the FDA. And the woman came in and she had in one hand Big Gulp, and on her face, she had so much acne that I thought I had to stay away from her because it might jump on me.
Ooh.
And so we sat down to discuss how we're going to feed our children in Head Start. She said, we're gonna give them honey buns. We're gonna give them drinks that are full of color and full of sugar. At lunch, we're gonna give them fried food, okay, white bread. And the sister who was the head, who was the director of that particular program, we had to keep her from jumping on this young lady and whooping her because of the fact that she's geared, the FDA gears our children for what they call ADD, ADHD, and violence because of the fact that at 5, 6 years old, what they do is they induce them with sugar. If you understand sugar, sugar's alcohol. You know, the bootleggers, the sheriff always knew who was doing some bootleg whiskey because they would buy up all the sugar.
That's right.
And so when you put that sugar in our children, it stops them from interacting with their spirit. And so they wind up having spiritual amnesia from that food, and them Europeans know that. One of the biggest things that they did, or they worked to do when they stole us from Africa, was to break us from our spirit, because they understood that if they could break us from our spirit, they had us. And they understand now the principle of how sugar functions with that. When I did my thesis for my PhD in nutrition, my thesis was on diabetes, and my book came out from that. And George Washington University did a study of 3 things: dairy products, sugar, and additives. And what they found was that all 3 of them reduced the nutritional value of the food and caused ADD, ADHD, depression, okay, violence, and self-esteem issues. So that's how our children are being geared, just like they're being geared to prison. They're being geared in terms of the food to become violent. So we have to begin to start at that early age. We have to get these young mothers to understand they need to breastfeed.
Yes.
Okay. And not give that child a cookie. Because the moment you do that, you set that child up for disaster. Thank you.
Okay. Before Terrence say a few words, I want to make an announcement that in June, after Kuzaliwa, our forum next month, June the 17th, I believe that's the day. That's the day we have our health forum on health. So we'd like to see you back and share with us again on health. Okay, Brother Terrence, you have something to share on that?
Oh, yes. And Brother Chris, spoke to it well, and the gentleman just went before me elaborated in a way that I cannot, right, when it comes to the systemic approach to the health of our people. But I can tell you about our families and our youth not having food. Safeways, or the prices are outrageous. And that is a significant factor as far as healthy foods and having food inside the household. So Sousa gets out an hour before Kimball. Sousa is the middle school. So Kimball's the elementary school. And so they have to wait for their brothers, sisters, cousins, family members to come out of school before they can come home. And once Kimball gets out of school, they're fighting like gladiators. And this is the middle school. to the point the police are being called. There's stabbings. They're taking. There's a metal detector before you get into the school because of how violent it is, and it's because there's a whole hour when they're hungry before they can pick up their sibling to go home. And so, noticing this and knowing this from the neighborhood, I spoke to a nonprofit organization that supplies food, and I said that this is a approach to public safety. You know, if you could provide them fruits in the morning time, so they're not hungry when they're going into school at the safe passage point. And then also to provide them healthy sandwiches, not chips. You know, they want to throw them chips and throw them honey buns. And I said, no, you know, let's get them some fruit in the morning and some healthy sandwiches for the afternoon while they're waiting for their sibling. And when their sibling comes out, they can have a sandwich waiting for them. So when they go back home, you know, this not so much hurry up, I need something to eat, because if it's not there, then that's disappointment and that's violence. And I intricately expressed this, and it is yet to happen. So that's what we're dealing with in Ward 8, to where the lack of food is causing violence. We're speaking about healthy foods, but they have a lack thereof food. We provide meals on Wednesday and Fridays for our groups, and that's probably the biggest attraction for them to show up is the food. We also provide them a stipend of $25 a week if they attend both groups, so they can get themselves something to eat. So, you know, the demographic, the target population that I'm dealing with are dealing with lack thereof food. And if they do get food, it has to be something fattening, sustainable to last them probably to the next day, the next time that they see us. So it's a different story. The lack thereof food per healthy food. But it also shows that, you know, when you reach out to get that healthy food, the kind of pushback you get. I bet if I would have said yes to those honey buns and those chips, then we'd have
would
those
have had
right
them
now.
already.
So that speaks to what we're dealing with.
Okay. All right, very good, Brother Terrence. All right, my sister, you know who's up, so let's hear from you tonight. We haven't heard your voice. We see your face right now. You on mute. All right, unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hey, I would say that this was one of the most insightful seminars, lectures, events, or whatever that I've been to in a long time. It was so very substantive. It was so very fruitful and full of very critical information for our people during these times and coming from different perspectives. Imamu, I just really want to take my hat off, my gele off, you know, to you for your insight in pulling this together. It's so very critical, particularly at this point in time, at this stage in our lives as Black people and in our lives as in survival mode. So I would like to know what's going to happen from here. Like, where do we go from here? I mean, how do we continue this discussion? How do we be about implementing some of the solutions that people have raised? How do we keep the fight up with respect to this? So that's the question I'd like to know.
Well, one of the things we hope to do, when I know we will, is to fellowship with each other. They're having forums and programs, and we're having forums and programs. So we would like to fellowship, share information, and I think we can start with that and see how we can help them, and they can see how we can help us. I'm talking about everybody who's participating, you know, every group. I mean, we have 6 presenters, so we have 6 different outlets that we can use to you know, tackle this level of violence. So that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing, is to fellowship And one of the groups that I'm a part of, Kwaku Carr, he's been working with us on this violence as well, and on the Council of Elders, which I'm a part of. And he had mentioned just food, and that's something else we will begin to do as well. And I'm very familiar with the Commerce Heights area, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. One time I was working, I used to go with NBUF when they used to do it every first Sunday, I believe, of the month.
That was Salim. That was Salim.
That was Salim, and Salim had me out there with him and working, and you know, so we were there, but we haven't been in a while. But that would be one area where we could, you know, provide fresh produce. And I was thinking what Brother Akmal was saying is that we could provide fresh produce, so yeah, and we'll be, and once we end this session, we'll be discussing UBC proper as to some of the things that we can and should do to move this agenda forward. Kichi. But that's
So
a good
let me just say
suggestion.
that you might want to, you know how we used to have what is Ujma Friday nights and all like that. Maybe
Right.
once a month, have a forum along these lines with a different topic or related topic or whatever, but that we know that it's going to happen each month on Zoom. I mean, you know, it is what it is now. Just to make sure that it's not a one-off and that the conversation keeps going. I know Cam talked a lot about you know, reparations, and you know, he talked about violence from that perspective and all. Well, with reparations, we talk about 5 injury areas: the mass incarceration, the health, the education, the poverty, wealth, the peoplehood. So I mean, all of this is all interconnected, and healing is one of the key components of a just reparatory justice you know, package. So
yeah. As I mentioned, in June we have our health forum. In July we have our blueprint for economic empowerment. So we'll be talking about these particular topics.
But I was going to say, my Mankichi, this is that thing you just suggested. This is it. You're in one. Every third Friday of every month we have a forum.
Oh, okay.
So it's here. So
except for May and September.
We're supposed to come back. I mean, last month was really good. A lot of the folks who were there last month ain't here. So we got to get some consistency, because it's not always going to be the subject that you're working on or that you're centered on, right? But it's all interconnected. But absolutely, every third Friday of every month, with the exception of Kuzaliwa, which is going to be on Saturday, he is here during these monthly forums.
And Keisha, you know that, you know, you and I are both also members of the National African American Reparations Commission. I think we have to, you know, raise this up as a national issue, for which we can, you know, have resources targeted toward these organizations and these institutions like the Alliance of Concerned Men and the 100 Fathers Incorporated and all these other, because in every city you have these type of organizations actually actively engaging with young men and young women who are, you know, those who are in this space of violence in the informal economy, locked into this, you know, this negative behavior in order to survive, as my brother was talking about, you know, not even being able to have food, not even being able to eat anything good, healthy. They're in a strict survival mode mentality. And it's like, you know, being at war and your resources are very limited. That's how they're living. And we have to have a national spotlight on this issue. And I know they're doing some things around violence, you know, at the White House now, but we need to ramp it up, that every governor, every state legislator, every city legislator is looking at this as a form of repair from crimes committed against our family. They want to blame the children for the violence. The violence, as brothers have spoken, the violence was perpetrated on them, perpetrated on their fathers before they even came here, perpetrated on their grandfathers. and their mothers and grandmothers. And so they're living the violence that was done to them. And so we cannot, allow the blame to be placed on these young people. Of course, they have to be held accountable, but we also, as the elders in the community, have to say where this violence is coming from. And it's a result of the violence that has been perpetrated on them and their families.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to, champion these organizations that are doing the work, assembling them together, so we can speak out at one voice, and have these resources targeted for these organizations so we can begin to impact the lives of our children, which impacts the lives of the community. One thing that we have been pushing with ANKOBIA, the new message, a newer message, initially we had been for years trying to educate our people on the righteousness of reparations. That is something that we were owed. Here's why we are owed it. Here's the crimes that have been committed against us. Here's the injuries that have resulted from those crimes, as Nkechi talked about the 5 injury areas. And this is what is due. Now we're at a point where we're seeing research comes out that says paying Black people reparations benefits the economy, the entire economy, not just the Black economy. So that's something we have to be able to push out more. There's a metric on the cost of violence to the communities, how much communities are suffering from economically by them allowing this violence to continue, and then how much the community can benefit from if they engage in reparatory justice and reparation resources. So we have to begin to argue this from an economic standpoint, as well as a standpoint of the debt that's owed to us, but an economic standpoint also from what it's costing the community and what it would benefit the community if they addressed it with resources, because every resource they put in the community, studies are showing that they get a $2 return. Every dollar gets a $2 return. So we have to begin to speak in these terms and demand, that these resources are directed to these communities, to these organizations in these communities who are doing the work, who are impacting our children. This is something that's going to perpetuate itself into the next generation. If you don't put fathers in homes, you're looking for a perpetual cycle of violence. The only way to really stop this long-term, what my brothers are doing short-term is great, but the only thing that stopped it on the long-term is putting fathers back into the homes. In order to do that, you have to get brothers employable, and so that they can be able to take care of their families. That's how you stop this going forward. But we have to intervene at the point where we see it happening. And that's what our brothers are doing, our young brothers are doing, who have spoken on this panel. However, we have to understand that this will perpetuate itself as long as our children are growing up fatherless, each generation. My brother Terrence talked about 6 generations of brothers working together in their program. Well, we're suffering from 4 generations of fatherlessness in some of these communities. You see, so this is a historical reality that we live in. History is in the present, and it will be in the future as well if we don't begin to see it as a standpoint of bringing fathers back in the home, dealing with our young brothers at where they at right now, and our young sisters, but they will be parents. They will be fathers, they will be mothers. And we have to look long-term as well. But this is a reparations issue, and I just want everybody to begin to think of it in that form as well, that this is something that is owed to us because something that the federal government did to us.
Yeah. When Nkechi told me about you participating in reparations, I said, well, I've never heard that spin on it, but I got a clearer picture now on what you're talking about, Cam. So it's very important. Yeah. Okay, anyone else before we close out tonight? Have anything to share? Oh, Brother Suptabar, he wanted to talk briefly about one practice that we overlook in terms of our health. We know a good night's sleep is good. We know eating the correct foods is good. Water, drinking enough water so we can make sure our brains and everything is lubricated well. Is he still with us, Suptabar? I guess he's not. Okay. All right, anyone else have anything to share? I know it's after 10 and we told everybody we probably will end at 10. So we not that far away from our time, but
I just wanted to suggest, and I mentioned it in the chat, that, you know, you can approach the health food stores and some of the other chain stores that have healthy food from their deli. And, you know, sometimes they're getting rid of it because of the date or just because they have too much stock. And you could get that food on a weekly basis. You're going to have to, you know, check it to make sure it's good. But that food could be utilized for the for your efforts, Terrence.
and also Brother Baruch over there for Everlasting Life. Man, he has tons of food that they give away on Saturday, man. In fact, tomorrow, I think they'll be giving it away from, he gave the times yesterday on the radio. I forgot the times, but Everlasting Life, they give away tons of fruits and vegetables and, man, good stuff over there. So.
Yes, as well as the University of Maryland gives away food. I just had a question with that food because I could never get any straight answers as to whether or not it is sprayed or if it's GMO, because, you know, obviously we don't want to be dealing with that kind of food. But, you know, that's another resource that somebody could investigate. But that means cooking, because that's food straight from the farm.
Okay.
And thank you for that resource. We've partnered with Giant, Safeway. We partnered with, you know, numerous food locations, and the time frame that we needed and the type of food resource that we need, because this is for our babies, right? This isn't for, you know, adults that are homeless. This is for our babies to, you know, be able to go to school and have fresh food that they will eat. You know, our children are a bit selective, not as a lot more selective than us adults. So we're gonna get with Martha's Tables. I met with them last week. We were supposed to get it from So Others May Eat, who has partnerships as well, and we've come into MOUs with these folks, right? So, but I'm gonna go back to Martha's Table and see if they can be a steady food provider, that's specific fruits and healthy sandwiches. I'd rather give them something healthy when we can get it than to give them trash that's going to further promote violence inside themselves. But yes, we are partnering with these stores, but it's not a consistent push, and they don't give us their best.
Oh, wow.
Hey, this is Mama Abner. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to piggyback on what Baba said about Baruch getting that food. Baruch asked for volunteers to come over and help distribute that food over at his place, E-Life. He gets that food, and this is just something that you can keep in mind. He gets that food from Costco. Costco throws away a lot of food, vegetables, produce. Baruch has said that Baruch brings a truckload of food. I've gone over there and volunteered and helped him. Stuff out there for people. And he gets a truckload of food, and what happens is he just puts it out in front of E-Life for people to come and take it and take it, you know, if they want it. So he says, and that's not even half the food that he brings over there that they throw out. So just connect with Baruch, find out how to get some of that food that Costco puts out. And the food looks like it's brand new. I mean, some bananas might have some brown dents on it and things like that. But the food is wonderful that they throw out every week. So connect with that brother over there, E-Life, to get some food from Costco. They throw, he says they throw away a lot every week.
Oh, okay.
And if I can chime in, when the food is like the food that Brother Baruch gives, they can give that away. If it's food that's prepared, they can't give it away because of the fact that lawsuits. That's the reason why hotels and restaurants don't give away food, because of lawsuits. But if it's raw food like that, they can give it away. And Baruch does he does a wonderful job of making sure that it's out there for people to just take.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good.
And I
Very
want
good.
to reiterate on that. This is Nana Malaya. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Nana
And I
Malaya.
know, yeah, hello, everybody. And Terrence, I just talked to you on the phone a couple days ago. We met by phone
Yes,
on the radio.
yes. We are family.
Yeah. Everybody is really wonderful because we really are a community. I'm grateful that I know each of you all and really well. I'm glad to know that even this forum, which I miss coming to UBC and, you know, on the Fridays, but I didn't know you were regularly having them on the Zoom. So now that I know that, I'll pass that on too. But even with Tree of Life, for instance, we created a program and we had to write a grant and all that kind of stuff, but we actually created a program so that, because the kids were coming to school with Cheetos and soda, hot chips and the hot Cheetos and soda, that was their breakfast, you know, because they got it from whatever corner store or whatever they could find, or you know, if they were, you know, the liquor stores in DC open up at like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, if somebody can go in there and get chips and soda, if that's all they can get, then that's what they had. So we started giving them fruit in the morning and fruit in the middle of the afternoon. So if they got hungry, they had, and then we started arranging to have like bushels of apples, because apples keep. If you cut up fruit and other kind of stuff, you got to worry about refrigerating it. If you got a lot of fresh fruit, and they can just come and grab an apple whenever they're hungry, and you know, so that ended up being really helpful. And it was a training process. And Akmal came over and did a whole nutrition program, and you know, for certain students, and then they had like a quiz, and so there's a lot of different ways that, you know, we can integrate the food into the other, so that folks kind of understand how they go hand in hand. But I want to give real props on all the programs that all of you all are doing, you know, the fathers and everything, and knowing more about that, so that we can continue to support you all, and, you know, feed folks into support what you're doing, write some proposals for you. Salim, yeah, you know, you had me already on the corner of Martin Luther King out there, you know, because we definitely have too many liquor stores out there. We definitely have to provide other alternatives. So classes for any of the organizations that we're talking about. One of the things that I've been really reiterating, especially since they've been pressing about what we can and can't teach our families, and that's all ages, our families in these institutions, we've got to teach our own. So if you have a facility and you want us to come there, we can be there, we can support you, and even different people that we're even talking about resources on this call. I mean, at different times, we can all, when it's appropriate, go to one of the locations that's being talked about, you know, out of these groups, so that we're each at times going to a different place. Or if you want to have a forum, have it at a different location. So different people now come there and they see, you know, and other stuff. Even taking, you'd be surprised, you take kids to a big grocery store, they ain't been in one. They'll think like they went to Disneyland. They're like, whoa, wow, look at all this stuff in the grocery store. I mean, it really is, it's an event for them. So, you know, even small things, I say small in quotation marks, because, you know, when you start changing things around, you know, also too, I have some family in Tanzania that has a program in which they encourage people to travel and come there and interact and you know, interact and work with some of the community members, both in the city and also in the countrysides. And I'll find out more about that and see how any of us adults, children activities can funnel into that, because there's a lot of adults who haven't been to the continent and don't know what that dynamic is about. And it really is horrific. And, you know, Jeff, my dear Jeff, spoke about this. I am appalled every time whether I'm watching TV or something, pops up on the computer or on my phone, and it's the missionaries and it's the starving children from wherever. And, and I say that because when we talk about change in behavior, you can't change without being aware of what the exposure is. So for instance, I was raised in the United States. My father's from out of the country. At the same time, I know that everything about the continent is still negative. I can turn on the news today and they will say Africa like it is a country. They will say Europe. Hell, we even know there's a Ukraine. A lot of people didn't know where Ukraine was before, but Africa is one place, and then you have all these other places. You got Japan, you've got Vietnam, you've got China, you've got Germany, you've got England, but you got Africa like it's just one place. And I say that because when you want children to respond or embrace their Africanness, if the only thing they see is the starving children, the missionaries do a wonderful job every day. Let's help them build a well. They're eating gruel in the commercial. I wouldn't even eat the stuff they're giving them kids, But I say that because that's all they see. So of course they don't want to be African. Because that's all they see. They don't know what we know about the great civilizations. And even like you said, in the museum, when you go, I was really pissed off when you go down and they have one wall that talks about some of the different aspects of the African continent before enslavement. But if there's too many people, you wouldn't even know that wall exists. And the next thing you know, you're in through the whole, tragic. And that's a part of the history, but we got all this other history to know about. Malcolm said we're more than the ex-slave. And so we really have to get, and I'm going to end by this poem. And that comes from Elizabeth Middleton that said, "We were the first to write, the first to read. Humanity began with the African seed. For 20,000 years, we were here alone, and then others were born. So sharpen your eyes and tune your ears so you know what you see, understand what you hear. Because minute by minute, hour by hour, when you lose your history, you lose your power." And we are losing our history. We are losing our power. Now, I'm real positive about we are going to reclaim it, and we haven't lost it all. But we just have to get back out in the trenches again. We've been locked down for 2 years, so we got to make sure that
can't wait to get back out.
Yeah, for us to get back out there, we have to get out in a different kind of way because, folks literally are starving. They're starving spiritually. All the things that each one of you pointed out, that are missing. Those statistics are not surprising, but it's all by design. That's the other aspect. We know it's designed like this. It's working exactly the way it's supposed to do. To destroy our families, to destroy our communities. So we have to help. Pull it back together. So congratulations for all the work you all are doing. My name's in the chat. My number. Most of you all know how to reach me. You need me for anything. Interactive programs utilizing the arts. Activities, thought-provoking, people learning about the history in interactive ways, visual arts, creative writing, dramatics, movement, yoga, dance, any of those things, which helps to stimulate, all those positive aspects of our pineal gland, and let people know what else they can do, So we got to take them from where they are to the next step, but
yes,
they're ready. They're willing to go.
Okay. One little history point before we go. You mentioned the country Tanzania. I don't know if y'all are baseball fans, but today is 42. This is the day they're honoring Jackie Robinson all across the baseball world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and his son, I think one of his sons died in a car accident, but one of his sons is living in Tanzania and married and got a lot of children over there. And he's growing coffee. They have a co-op coffee, Unity Coffee, I think that's the name of it. And he's selling it to some of the baseball teams. And, he's think they're doing
Great.
pretty good. Yeah. So, yeah, a little history note there.
Hey,
Sure,
family.
that's an,
Hey, family, one more thing. This is Abner again. And I don't know, we were talking about the food. And if you all are familiar with Black urban gardeners, right? And I'm gonna go visit a garden, a brother who's got a big old farm garden up there in Baltimore. And I understand he distributes food. They're trying to get on the track of teaching people how to grow their own foods.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go visit tomorrow. I'd like to be able to connect, brother, who's searching for food with these folks who and it's Black Urban Gardening Day tomorrow. And we're connecting to the Black gardeners, the Black farmers in the country. So that's another way to be able to teach our folks how to grow their own foods, how to buy from one another instead of buying from Safeway, and things like that. So
well, Abner, you got to come back and give us a report on your, what you did there. That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're doing a big deal up in Baltimore. And this brother got a big old place up there where he's growing food. He will mail food out to people. He'll send food, things like that. And he's growing all year long.
Oh, okay. Great,
okay.
Great,
We also know a sister who growing, she about to buy a farm, growing her own aloe vera. Aloe vera is very healing. I'm talking about real aloe vera juice, real aloe vera. And it's very healing. So we can connect people together.
Okay, very good. Any closing remarks, Kelechi? Before we go, I know it's late. It's almost 10:30, and we've been at this for 3.5 hours, and we really appreciate everyone, all the different sharing and caring and the work, and that was, man, it's been great, man, and we got to make sure we get this out to the community, the more of the community, this information, so we can share what we learn.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's 10:30. So, but I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I really, I want to join in those that have commended these two young brothers and other brothers they work with. There are cycles in our lives, all the way from before we're born to when we're ancestors, and we don't always recognize those cycles. Each cycle has property, has a responsibility, and has a placement. I'm referring to childhood, adolescent, young adult, warrior, community builder, elder. All these are cycles, right? And everybody isn't in the same cycle, and each cycle has a function. And these two brothers are doing a yeoman's job in the cycle that they're in. They are warriors in our community, and that's where they're supposed to be. And we really appreciate them, because a lot of warriors don't even know they're warriors, and they're definitely not stepping up because they're still stuck in adolescence. They never move. They have stunted development, arrested development. And that's the result of the system that we're in. The food deprivation, the educational deprivation, the economic deprivation. All these things are set up to stunt our development. And we have to do whatever we can to help our people progress individually in their cycles as well as a community. And I really do commend these brothers. Without going on too much, definitely there's a lot of resources have been connected here. I know y'all taking notes. The elders, like Bobby and Mamu, are not going to be out there like y'all can be out there. They can't be out there like that. And we recognize that. But they're resources. They're available. In other words, they're a phone call away, right? We're a phone call away. Me personally, I'm a phone call away. And Brother Salim knows how to pull us in from time to time. Whether it's over at the tennis center over in Southeast, or whether it's over at MLK and Malcolm X, or whether it's over at wherever, Berry Farms. But these are resources, and we have to connect the resources that we have with the workers that we have on the ground. some of the programs that you all are engaged in with these young brothers, especially, you don't necessarily talk about it in that way, but Baba ATIBA mentioned it. These are themselves rites of passage programs. You don't necessarily speak of them in that way, but that's essentially what they are. You know, we oftentimes get focused on adolescent rites of passage, right? But that's 1 out of 8. You know, throughout our cycles, each cycle has a rites of passage, and if it doesn't have one, we get stuck. You know, and you know, we used to be in traditional environments where the system would take us through our cycles. We're not there anymore. We're behind enemy lines. So, you know, what you all are doing are actually helping our brothers go through that rites of passage that takes them from you know, that warrior energy into being householders. Because if you're in that energy and you don't know what to do with it, you're gonna stay there. And then you know, it's like somebody who goes to war and the war is over, they keep fighting. And they end up being a detriment to the community. At one point, they thought they were protected, right? And why is that? It's because the cycle is broken, and the work you all are doing is really, it's a rites of passage program that you all are doing. It's critical, and it's important to connect that cultural element with the work that you're doing. There's a lot of brothers and sisters on here, been on here tonight, who are knowledgeable and connected, and capable to lend assistance and be of service, especially in terms of bringing that cultural context. You know, we have a field of young elephants, you know, and then a whole lot of bull elephants keep them together. And what do young elephants do when the bull elephants aren't around? They run rampant. They do what they're doing. You know, so it's really important. You know, I've gone longer than I thought I was going to go, but the idea is that these are resources that can be brought in. So please call on them, call on us. There's some programs that me and Bobby Mamu and some other brothers were doing, you know, in terms of helping, you know, young men, right, and not so young men, you know, through that whole manhood thing. And we need to get back to that, and we need to connect with that. But definitely, the resources are here. I really commend you all, and thanks for everybody who came and spoke and shared. Dr. Menzies, I think he's gone. You know, the warning signs are really like, I mean, that's critical. We're going to share that, you know, because we're seeing it, you know, and often, you know, he didn't mention the brother in New York. I mean, you know, it's on the news, the one that shot the subway.
Yeah, he had those warning signs.
Absolutely.
Every one of them.
I mean, you know, that's a whole other thing. We need to begin to recognize, you know, there's a book, and I recommend this to anybody who hasn't read it, called Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton. And one of the things that I took from that book is that, you know, this system has a detrimental effect on our psychology. And if we're not active in countering it, it will destroy us in one way or the other. In one way or the other, right? It will destroy us. In other words, so it's better for us to spend our energy liberating our people than let the system destroy us. And you know, it's a very, very powerful book. I would recommend it, Revolutionary Suicide, and I see our people being destroyed individually, you know, through the effect of the system that we're in. We have to definitely counter that, and knowledge base is critical. So definitely, I'm very hopeful, right? And I really appreciate the work that is going on. And I think Brother Salim mentioned May 19th, on Brother Malcolm's birthday. They're going to be, I think he said, building a community garden at that park on Malcolm X and MLK.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the exact time of that, but you know, we're going to try and spread that, so folks can come out and support. I mean, that's where the work needs to get done, and we definitely need to connect uptown with that with you know, other side of the Acacia. We don't always connect those communities, and sometimes, you know, we talk about bringing the children to the continent. Some of these children ain't been to the Northwest.
That's right.
I'm serious. That's real, right?
No, that's
You know,
real. That's
they're
real.
coming
Real.
Northwest. It's like, whoa, what's
They,
this? Black
right.
people live like this?
That's right.
So we
They ain't
got
never
to
been
do that.
downtown. Right.
Right. I mean, downtown is like it might as well be wherever, right? So we got to make those connections. And you know, I really thank you, brothers, and all the brothers and sisters that spoke today and shared with us. And next month, on May 21st, on Saturday, I believe at 1 p.m. But what the exact details we're working out, but we're gonna have our annual celebration of Brother Malcolm, who is the ultimate male archetype, in my opinion, for our people. Somebody that we need to duplicate and replicate as much as possible in our community, because we are in crisis mode, and you know we need those bull elephants to stand up. Otherwise, you know the young bucks are gonna keep running like young bucks do. So you know, I think.
I have a question, and I apologize for interrupting, but I want to make sure. I literally live. You know, I live in Maryland now. So even though I'm in DC most of the time, but what I don't know, and I have not been able to find, the people and the men that are doing programs like this in Prince George's County. So if you all know anyone, my number's in the chat, text me, you know, let me know, because I'm trying to find them, not only for myself, but for other people who are inquiring as well.
And lastly, before we go, I shared this book with our brother Tyrone. Did anyone ever at Alliance, did he drop these off there? Do you know? It's called.
He probably intends to. I haven't received them yet, but I'm sure if you gave it to him, it's coming our way.
Yeah, this is a book on parenting skills and family life skills. And Brother Kalechi mentioned Malcolm, and his Malcolm and Muhammad Ali. And you know, we got to show our, you know, it's good to see our men with their children, you know, reading. And the other picture here in the middle, this is an old ancient Egyptian picture, years and thousands of years ago, of a family. I mean, how many times you ever seen a statue of a Black family 3, 4, 5, 7,000 years ago, man? It's right here. And when we have to see ourselves.
What's the name of that book?
Light, it's called Where Have All the Flowers Gone? Cultivating Black Parenting and Family Life Skills.
And Brother Chris wanted to respond to Nana Malaya's question, like in terms of the Prince George's County. I saw you getting ready to say something when she was.
I guess you saw my pupils dilate. You know, so I do stay very busy. I work for 2 other nonprofits, Pet Rally for Peace in the Streets, which we do PG County and DC. I help out MAM DC and Southeast and Uptown DC. And I do have a truck also, whatever, which again, go figure, Terrence. That's just my man, y'all. Yeah, it's just great that it's all worked in fruition together. But when we were helping out with Baloo, all the COVID. So if I could be of assistance and I know about it in advance, let's just say, I guess it's heads of lettuce and stuff like, you know, or heavy duty items. I do go to a lot of those underserved communities. I try to, I do a lot dealing with the elderly. What are the other ones that I deal with? I used to do the schools also too, but I do it also in PG County. I'm really in Suitland and Landover, basically, but I really work for the government out in Bethesda, and my daughter's in DC, so I'm all over Maryland, DC, Virginia every single day. So, you know, if I could be of assistance, if you know, it's a big community, maybe that might need food and stuff like that, retirement home or something of that nature, you know, and I know in advance, then I'll definitely try to assist and help out and stuff.
Okay, very good, brother.
You want to put your number in the chat?
Yes, ma'am. It's in there, and you can contact me. My phone is 24 hours, both of them.
Okay. God bless you. What's your birth sign?
I'm a Leo.
It's a Mercury. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I talk a lot. I had to get some education with it though. I used to talk too much, and it wasn't. So you know, it's have fun with it, man. I thank y'all to keep my confidence in this and stuff, and just again my elders and Terrence, and we're gonna just progress in 2022, and we're gonna be consistent and keep engaging with each other and learning from each other, utilizing each other's resources, as we said, and helping these young brothers. Which if we help them out, I think the women will follow, and we'll start to be a better race.
Yes, no doubt. Give thanks, man. All right, so
Yeah,
that's a
and if I
good way
could-
to close us out, Brother Terrence.
One last comment.
Okay.
That as far as the women, I'm glad we're focusing on the men, because I think the men focusing on the men is important. There's a program called Just Heal Bro, J-U-S-T Heal, H-E-A-L-B-R-O, that's being promoted primarily on IG, Instagram, but it's a program that's going around nationally, and
I heard
anyone
that term.
who wants to bring folks in. So actually one of my sons, who's a prominent actor, some athletes and other people whose faces will draw people to the place, but the program is free, but it's a structured, but also free form, interactive form, intergenerational, to get Black men to come out and talk about the issues and find resources to deal with some of the challenges that they have. So, and if you need any more information on that, you all can, talk to me. And we can deal with the women at another time. I think we need to deal with the men, but a lot of the women violence is internal from, the sexual abuse and other kinds of behaviors that they have, primarily perpetuating against themselves. Of course, more and more women and young women are lashing out, but that's a whole nother topic that we need to take a look at the violence, not just perpetuated against them, but their cycles of violence as well. Just a little different.
Okay.
Yeah, but Mama, I see that as a call to action right there. Because I don't think we've ever dealt with that particular topic. Brother Dr. Jeff mentioned a little bit of it, but I think that should be a focus of a program in and of itself, because the children are raised by primarily the nurturer, right? So if the nurturer is critically ill, then the product is accordingly, right? So we need to deal with that as a focus for a forum in the future.
And unfortunately, it happens more often than anyone would wish. I had a group, and it was really just a support group of women. They didn't have to be parents; they could be parents. Just a women's support group. And out of 25 women, by the time the group had gelled and people could share confidently, I'd say within like 6 months, 23 of the 25 had been sexually abused. And that's not the reason why we came together. We just came together. General stress for women, support, encouragement, job, family, parenting, But so those statistics, unfortunately, are very high. And then the other side we have to deal with is not only the homeless youth, but when children are in foster care, once they get to be 18, they're literally just let go, and there's no care for them. And that's a whole nother aspect of violence that, and in fact, Imamu, there's a couple of students from Tree of Life that were in foster care. And I ran into one. He was brilliant. He had graduated. And he said, I don't have anywhere to go because they're kicking me out because he's aging out. He was 18. So just stuff like that, So, and of course, that's going to feed right into either some more drama, trauma, violence, prison, all those different things. So, and I'll go into prisons too if you need me to. I've been in there before. So
yes.
All right, y'all.
All right. So good evening, brothers and sisters. Good evening. Great sharing. So now the work will continue.
Hey, Bo. I don't know if Baba Rashafik is still around. Maybe he can close us out. He's probably asleep. I don't know. Bo. But definitely thank you all. Thank you everybody for coming through. Thank you for all the presenters. A lot of information shared in terms of contacts. Let's use them. Please reach out to us. United Black Community has a lot of connections. There's nothing you can ask for that we don't have a connection to. in terms of resources. You know, we may not have monetary resources, but we got people resources. You know, we got elders deep. So whatever it is, you know, that there's somebody that we can connect to help with one thing or the other. So please, use okay. Bible said I'm talking about him, so he showed up. Yeah, I'm gonna say
I heard you, Bob. I was trying to unmute, but we could close out with those Harambes.
Yeah, Bible.
Harambe is a Kiswahili word that means let's pull together. I know y'all have heard that term before, right? Harambe. Yeah.
Yeah, Bo. And I want to give thanks, gratitude, and appreciation for all the comments that were made, all the information that was shared with us. Thought it was a very worthwhile and fruitful discussion. And that's what UBC forums are all about. So we continue to pull together. So as you say, Baba, let's do those 7 Harambes. Go ahead and start us out, Baba. Uma.
Okay, on 3,
Please.
we're gonna start. 1, 2, 3. Harambe.
Harambe. Harambe. Harambe. Harambe.
Harambe. Was that 7? I wasn't even counting.
Bob Clutch, did you mention the co-op?
I did not. Speaking of fresh food, we got Black Farmer bringing fresh food to 2015 Bunker Hill Road Northeast tomorrow. 2015 Bunker Hill Road Northeast tomorrow. Got Black Farmer, and not just a Black Farmer, but we have a Black co-op carrying products manufactured by Black people in our community. Some as close as Baltimore, some as far as Chicago, Atlanta, and places like that. Everything we carry at the co-op is made by Black people, by Black families. And we're talking about everyday personal care products, bathroom tissue, paper towels, detergent, name it. If you use it today, we carry it, right? Toothpaste, whatever it is, we got it. And this is all manufactured by Black people. You can come to 2015 Bunker Hill Road. It's all there. You buy it, you walk away. We're not ordering nothing. We got it right there. We got the fresh food. The weather's gonna be decent tomorrow, so come out, support the Black Sided Co-op, and hopefully, you know, we'll get a lot of folks coming out. I know the weather might be a little tricky, but we're not, you know, well, the farmers market's outside, but the store is inside, so the weather don't matter anyway. Black soap, you know, whatever it is you need for your daily, you know, we got some neem tea that just came in from Sierra Leone. We got
moringa.
I mean, we got a whole bunch of stuff. I'll be sitting up here trying to list things. But come through, Black Farmers Market, Black Sided Co-op, products made by Black people for your family. It's healthy. Everything is very much on the mindset of being ecologically responsible, and it's really bringing resources to our community by funding Black families to make the things that we use. If we're not making what we use every day, and if you have to rely on your enemy for the bathroom tissue you use, you can't win, right? But here we are, Black folk are making it. We gotta support it. It's critical. It's on a real basic level. So 2015 Bunker Hill Road, Northeast, Washington, D.C., come through. Love to see you all there. The few that are still left over at 10:47.
Okay. All right. Give thanks, brothers.
Oh, I didn't give a time. It's 2 to 5. It's 2 to 5. 2 to 5 tomorrow.
First and third Saturdays.
Yeah, Bo. All right. Good night, everyone.
All right.
Happy full moon.
Good night. Also full moon. Oh, wow. Okay.
Peace and
All
blessings,
right.
everyone.
So everybody next time.
I think I just heard a howl. Good night, everyone.